Get away from me!" Sophia's voice barely carried above the music, but her hands were shaking so hard the champagne glasses rattled against each other on the silver tray. The most feared man in New York was standing 2 feet away from her, blocking her only path to the service hallway, and he was staring at her like he already knew every single secret she had spent 3 years trying to bury. If you love stories about second chances, hidden pasts, and love that finds you even when you're running from it, subscribe to our channel. Drop the name of your city in the comments below so I can see how far this story has traveled, and stay with me until the very last word. The letter was folded into a square so small Sophia could press it flat against her palm, and no one would ever know it was there. She had been doing that all night, pressing it against her palm, feeling the sharp corner of the paper dig into her skin, using that small pain to remind herself why she was here. Why she was carrying a tray through a room full of people who had more money than she would earn in 10 lifetimes. Why she was smiling at strangers who looked through her like she was furniture. She needed the money. That was the beginning and the end of it. The Waldorf Astoria ballroom had been transformed for the night into something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers throwing light across the faces of senators and billionaires. The kind of people who made decisions that changed cities without ever visiting the neighborhoods they changed. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers, and the particular kind of confidence that came from never having worried about rent. Sophia moved through all of it like water around stone. She had learned this skill over years of working events exactly like this one, the charity galas and foundation dinners and corporate anniversaries that filled the calendars of New York's elite. She knew how to hold a tray level without looking at it. She knew how to refill a glass without breaking a conversation. She knew how to meet someone's eyes just long enough to be polite and then let her gaze slide away before they had any reason to remember her face. Invisible. That was the goal. Get through the night, collect the payment, disappear before anyone remembered she existed. The letter in her hand had arrived 3 days ago. She had read it so many times the paper had started to soften at the creases, the ink slightly smeared where her fingers had pressed too hard, while she tried to make the numbers say something different than what they said. Her father had taken the loan 6 years ago, when her mother was sick and the medical bills were drowning them. He had gone to the only people willing to lend money to a man with no collateral and no connections, which meant he had gone to the wrong people. Her father had died before he could pay it back. Her mother had followed him 11 months later. That left Sophia, and it left Ethan, her 16-year-old brother, who was still too young to understand that the debt he had inherited was not the kind that came with a payment schedule and a customer service line. The number in the letter was $87,000. They had given her 30 days. The men who had delivered the letter in person, 2 of them standing at her apartment door at 6 in the morning, had not been unkind. That was almost the worst part. They had been completely calm, which meant this was routine for them. Collecting from families who had nowhere to turn was something they did the way other people did laundry. One of them had said while she stood in the doorway in her coat and her work shoes, because she had been about to leave for her first shift of the day. "We know about the boy. We know where he goes to school. We're not threatening you. We're just making sure you understand the full picture." She understood the full picture. So she had taken every extra shift she could find. She had sold her mother's jewelry, not all of it, not the small gold locket with the photo inside, but everything else. She had done the math 17 different ways, and the math kept giving her the same answer. She needed one more thing, one more solution, and she had not found it yet. Sophia turned at the far end of the ballroom and started back along the opposite wall, keeping close to the shadows between the columns, moving toward the kitchen to reload her tray. She was 3 steps from the service door when the room changed. She felt it before she understood it. The kind of shift that happens in a crowd when something powerful enters a space like a pressure drop, like the moment before a storm when the air goes heavy and still. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they softened. People turned without meaning to. Glasses paused halfway to mouths. She didn't look. She kept walking. She pushed through the service door and set her tray down on the counter and let herself exhale for the first time in 20 minutes. Did you see him? The other server, a woman named Carla who had been doing this circuit of events for 15 years, was already moving to peer through the small round window in the door. Leonardo Moretti. He just walked in. Sophia poured champagne into a fresh row of glasses with steady hands. I don't know who that is. Then you're lucky, Carla said, still watching through the window. Or maybe unlucky. Depends on how you look at it. She let the door swing back and started loading her own tray. He owns half the real estate south of Midtown, runs about 20 legitimate businesses, and about 10 that nobody talks about in public. Mafia, Sophia asked, because she was not naive about the kinds of money that circulated at events like this. The kind of mafia that wears $10,000 suits and shows up on the Forbes list, Carla said. The kind where nobody ever proves anything because the people who could prove it keep having accidents. She shrugged with the particular acceptance of someone who had learned not to be surprised by the world. He never comes to these things, not in 3 years. Something's different tonight. Sophia picked up her tray. Not my problem, she said, and pushed back through the door. She made it 45 minutes without incident. 45 minutes of controlled invisibility, moving in careful arcs through the crowd, keeping her eyes at the middle distance. The professional smile she had built over years of practice, doing exactly what it was supposed to do, making her present without making her memorable. And then she turned a corner near the string quartet and walked directly into the path of the most feared man in New York. She knew it was him before she saw his face because of the way the people around him moved just slightly, just enough the way water moves ahead of something large passing beneath the surface. He was tall, dressed in black, and he was not looking at the crowd. He was not working the room the way every other powerful person in the building was working the room. He was looking at her. Sophia had 2 seconds to process this before her body made the decision her brain hadn't finished making yet, and she pivoted smoothly to the right, redirecting her path toward a cluster of guests near the window. She made it 4 steps. Miss Bennett? She stopped. Not because the voice commanded it, though it did in the way that voices trained by decades of being obeyed always carried command even in quiet registers. She stopped because no one at this event knew her last name. She turned slowly. He was closer than she expected, which meant he had moved fast and quietly for a man of his size. 40 maybe, though he wore it in a way that made age feel irrelevant. Not young, not old, just built by time into something that didn't apologize for taking up space. His eyes were dark and completely still, the eyes of someone who had learned long ago not to let his face tell people what he was thinking. I'm sorry, she said carefully. I think you have me confused with someone else. I don't. She kept her voice level. I'm staff. I'm just here to... I know what you're here for, he said. And then, before she could move, my name is Leonardo Moretti, and I need to speak with you privately, please. The last word surprised her. The please. Men like this, and she had been working these events long enough to understand the architecture of power. The way certain men spoke to service workers. Men like this did not say please. They said things that were shaped like requests, but were actually instructions. They said things with smiles that didn't reach their eyes, while their hands stayed loose at their sides ready. Leonardo Moretti said please and meant it. She didn't know what to do with that. I don't know you, she said. I know. He shifted slightly, and she realized he had positioned himself not to trap her, but to give her the clearest possible path away from him. Like he was showing her the exit to make sure she understood she could use it. I'm asking for 10 minutes. If you want to leave after that, you walk away, and I will never approach you again. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. Every instinct she had developed over 26 years of learning to read dangerous situations was firing at once. And they were saying contradictory things. Run. He's exactly what people say he is. But also, he said please. He showed you the exit. He's not blocking you. 10 minutes, she said finally. He led her to a balcony off the corridor on the hotel's second floor, accessed through a door that required a key card he produced without any ceremony, which told her he had arranged this in advance, which meant he had planned for the possibility that she would agree. She filed that away. The night air was cold coming off the city. The sounds of traffic rose from the street below like something slow and continuous, and the lights of Manhattan spread out in every direction, indifferent and enormous. Sophia stood with her back to the railing, keeping her tray in her hands, a small barrier, a prop, something to hold. Leonardo stood near the door, not between her and the exit. Near the door, not in front of it. She noticed everything. "Talk," she said. He looked at her for a moment like he was choosing which door to open first. 3 years ago, he said, there was a woman living alone in an apartment on West 84th Street. Her name was Isabella. Sophia went still. She was sick. She had been sick for a long time, and she had pushed away most of the people who loved her, including me. He paused. Including me most of all. We had an argument 8 months before she died, and I said things I cannot take back, and she told me to leave. And I left. His voice was even, completely controlled, but she could hear the thing underneath the control, the way a wall sounds hollow when you knock in the right place. She died alone, he said. Except she didn't. Sophia's hands tightened on the edge of the tray. There was a young woman, Leonardo continued, a neighbor, or not exactly a neighbor. I was never able to establish exactly how the connection started, but she came. She brought food. She sat with Isabella in the evenings and read to her. She was there when Isabella went to the hospital the last time and she stayed, and when Isabella died, this young woman arranged for her to be buried properly because no one else had come. He stopped. The city made its sounds below them. She left before I arrived, he said. She didn't leave a name. She didn't leave contact information. The nurses remembered her, but only vaguely young dark hair, quiet. Nobody knew her name. Sophia realized her throat had closed. She remembered Isabella, not as anyone connected to power or money. She remembered a woman in her early 30s who was fierce and funny, and desperately sad, who had strong opinions about the novels Sophia read to her, and who talked about her family in the way people talk about things they have decided not to want anymore, with a fierceness that was really grief wearing different clothes. She had never told Sophia her last name. Sophia had never asked. It took me 3 years, Leonardo said, to find you. The silence between them stretched long enough that Sophia could feel the cold settling into her shoulders. I didn't know who she was, she finally said. I know. I didn't help her because of I didn't know. She was sick and she was alone and She stopped. I don't need you to thank me. That's not why I did it. I know that too, Leonardo said. And something shifted in his face, not softened exactly, but changed like a window opened in a wall. That's why I've been looking for you. I don't understand. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the people who do things for reasons I understand them. People want money or influence or security or gratitude. I understand all of that. I've spent my entire life inside systems built on exactly that kind of exchange. He looked at her steadily. What Isabella told me in the letters she left, she wrote about you. She called you the woman who asked for nothing. She said she had never met anyone like that, and I have spent 3 years trying to understand what kind of person is built that way. Sophia felt something uncomfortable happening in her chest. Why does it matter what kind of person I am? Because Isabella was my sister, he said. And she told me in the last letter she left that if I ever found the woman who sat beside her, I should tell her something. Sophia waited. She said to tell you that your kindness was the only thing in her last months that didn't feel like pity. She said you treated her like a person instead of a tragedy. She said that was the greatest gift anyone ever gave her. Sophia's eyes burned. She would not cry in front of this man. She had learned a long time ago that crying in front of powerful people gave them something to use, but her throat was doing something she couldn't entirely control, and when she spoke, her voice came out thinner than she intended. She told me once that she had a brother, Sophia said. She said he was the most stubborn person she had ever met. She said he never said sorry first, even when he was wrong. Leonardo looked like he'd been struck. She also said, Sophia continued, because Isabella had made her promise to say this if she ever had the chance, because Isabella had been planning ahead in ways Sophia hadn't understood at the time. She said to tell him that she forgave him, before he even asked. The silence that followed was the longest of the night. Leonardo Moretti, feared by half of New York, respected and hated in equal measure, stood completely still on a balcony 30 feet above Fifth Avenue, and he pressed his hand flat against his chest like something was happening there that he was trying to hold in place. "She told you to tell me that," he said finally. "She made me promise. I didn't know why at the time. I didn't know who you were. She never told me your name." Sophia shook her head. "She just said she said someday I might meet someone who needed to hear it, and I would know when the moment was right." "She was always better at this than I was," Leonardo said quietly. "At what?" "Forgiveness." He exhaled, and she could see how much that one word cost him. "She always knew how to let things go. I never learned." They stood there for another few minutes without speaking. The city hummed below them. Someone opened the corridor door a crack, and then let it close again when they heard voices. Sophia thought about the letter in her purse, about the 30-day deadline, about Ethan at home tonight with the neighbor she'd asked to check on him doing homework at the kitchen table, or playing the video game she'd found at the thrift store, not knowing the exact shape of the pressure his sister was carrying. "I should go back," she said. "There's something else." She looked at him. "I found out while I was looking for you that you were struggling." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I want to help." And there it was. Sophia had been waiting for this, had known it was coming from the moment he stopped her in the ballroom. And now that it had arrived, she felt the familiar cold settle over her like armor. "I don't want your money," she said. "I know you don't. I don't want to owe you anything. I don't want—" "Sophia." His voice was quiet, but it cut through her. "I'm not offering you a deal. I'm not extending a loan. I'm not creating an obligation. I want nothing from you." "People always want something." "Yes," he said. "I know. I've spent my life around people exactly like that." He met her eyes. "I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to hear me out. If after that you want to walk away, you walk away. I will not follow you." She looked at him for a long moment, the city glittering behind him. "Then say what you're going to say," she said. "Your father's debt," he said. "The $87,000. The men who came to your door. I want to deal with it." The cold armor cracked. She hadn't told him the amount. She hadn't told him about the visit. She hadn't told him anything. "How do you know about that?" she said, and her voice came out sharp enough to cut. "Because I've known about it for 3 weeks, he said. "The moment I found your name and started looking, I found everything else too. The debt, the collectors, the timeline. You've been watching me. I've been gathering information. There's a difference. Not to me, there isn't." Her hands were shaking again, and this time she let them because the shaking was honest, and she was tired of performing calm she didn't feel. "You've been investigating my life without my knowledge. You've been—" "Yes," he said, "and I'm not going to apologize for it, because the information I found made it clear you needed help and wouldn't ask for it, and I needed to understand the situation before I could do anything about it. Without asking me. If I had asked you, you would have said no." She opened her mouth. She closed it again, because he was right, and they both knew it. "I paid the debt," he said. 3 days ago. It's done. The men who came to your door will not come back." Sophia stared at him. "You paid it without asking me." "Yes." "So now I owe you $87,000. "No." His voice was flat and final. "You owe me nothing. The debt is paid and it's closed, and it has nothing to do with you and me standing here. It never did. That was between me and the people who were threatening you, and I handled it the same way I handle anyone who threatens someone I—" He stopped. The pause lasted 1 beat too long. Someone you what? Sophia said. He looked at her. Someone I'm responsible for, he said. I'm not your responsibility. Your kindness to my sister made her last months livable, he said. I am responsible for that. I don't know how else to explain it to you. The service door clicked open behind her. Sophia. Carla's voice, professionally neutral, carrying the clear subtext of, "You're late, and I'm covering for you." They need everyone back. Sophia didn't move. She was looking at Leonardo Moretti, trying to find the angle, trying to find the thing underneath the thing, the way she always looked at offers, because every offer she had ever received had something hidden inside it. She couldn't find it, and that frightened her more than anything else that had happened tonight. I need to think, she said. Of course. I'm not agreeing to anything. The debt being paid doesn't change anything. I don't know you. I know. And I don't. She stopped. I don't want to be a project. For the first time that night, something shifted in his face that she might have called a smile if it weren't for the sadness running through it. You're not a project, he said. You're the woman who gave my sister the only peace she had at the end. You don't owe me anything for knowing that. It's just something I needed to understand. Sophia looked at him for one more long second. Then she turned and went back through the door. She worked the rest of the event with her hands on autopilot and her mind somewhere else entirely. She collected her payment from the event coordinator at 11:30 cash in an envelope, the standard arrangement, and she left through the service entrance and walked 3 blocks to the subway and sat on a bench on the platform waiting for the downtown train. Her phone buzzed. A text from the number that had been sending her the check-in messages from the collectors for the past 6 months. It was a single line, debt satisfied. Account closed. No further contact. Sophia read it 3 times. She folded her hands in her lap and sat with it. The train came bright and loud, and she got on. The car was half empty at this hour, a group of college students at the far end, a man in a delivery uniform asleep against the window, 2 women talking quietly in Spanish. Normal life. Ordinary life. The kind of life that went on whether powerful men were rearranging things in the background or not. $87,000. Gone. Just gone. She should feel relieved. She had been carrying that weight for 3 years, and it was supposed to be gone now, and she should feel like something had been lifted. But all she felt was the complicated, specific unease of someone who has been moved without being asked, who has been helped without being consulted, whose life has been touched by someone else's decision, and who does not know yet what that means. She thought about Isabella. She thought about the Isabella she had known, not the Isabella with a powerful brother and a family history she had never mentioned, but the woman who had strong opinions about which authors were worth reading, and weak opinions about coffee, and who had cried twice in Sophia's presence, once about a book, and once about something she refused to name. The woman who had said near the end that the only regret she could live with was the ones that had already happened, because at least those were finished. She thought about what Leonardo had said. She said you treated her like a person instead of a tragedy. Sophia closed her eyes. She had done that because it was the only thing she knew how to do, look at people and see them plainly, without pity, without the distance that pity created. It wasn't a virtue. It was just how she was built. She hadn't known it would matter to anyone. The apartment was quiet when she got home. Ethan was asleep, his school books stacked on the kitchen table in a way that told her he had genuinely been studying and had genuinely fallen asleep before he finished, which was better than the alternative. She checked on him, pulled his door almost closed, and stood in the dark kitchen for a moment. The letter that had been folded in her hand all night was still in her purse. She took it out, looked at it. The numbers that had represented catastrophe this morning represented something different now. She didn't know if that was better. She put the letter in the kitchen drawer where she kept important papers and changed out of her work clothes and lay down on her bed without turning the light on. She stared at the ceiling. She thought about what Leonardo Moretti had done tonight. Not the money. She could think about the money later, could work out what she felt about the money, when her brain was less crowded with everything else. She thought about the way he had positioned himself on the balcony, about the pleas, about the path he had kept open for her. She thought about the way his face had changed when she told him Isabella had forgiven him. There was a word for what she had seen in his face in that moment. She had worked hard for a long time not to let herself use it, because recognizing grief in other people too clearly had a way of making her feel responsible for it. But the word was grief, plain real and completely unperformed. Whatever else Leonardo Moretti was, he had loved his sister, and he had not been able to tell her that before she died. She fell asleep before she meant to. She dreamed about the Waldorf ballroom, hundreds of people in expensive clothes, and herself moving through them like water, invisible, purposeful, carrying a tray that kept changing what it held. In the dream, she was 3 steps from the service door when she stopped. Not because someone called her name, but because she decided to. She set the tray down on a table, she turned around, and the ballroom was empty. Every guest was gone. The lights were still up, the chandeliers still throwing diamonds across the floor, the music still playing from somewhere she couldn't locate. And across the empty room, standing at the far end, was a woman she recognized. Isabella. Not sick. Not at the end of anything. Just standing there in a dark dress looking at Sophia with the particular expression she'd had when she was about to say something important, and had already decided Sophia wasn't going to like it. "You're still trying to disappear," Isabella said. "I'm not," Sophia said. "You set the tray down, you turned around, that's already something different." Isabella tilted her head. "Don't run from the wrong thing, Sophia. You're very good at running. Make sure you know what you're running from." Then the train station intercom came over the dream and pulled her back up out of sleep, and she was in her apartment in the dark, staring at the ceiling again. 4:17 in the morning. She lay there until the light started to change at the window. Then she got up and made coffee, and stood at the kitchen counter, and made herself think clearly about what had actually happened tonight, without the exhaustion and the shock running interference. A man, a powerful man, a dangerous man. A man she had no reason to trust, had paid a debt that had been crushing her. He had done it without asking. He had done it without making it a deal. He had done it because of something his dead sister had written about her. He had told her she was free to walk away. And then he had let her. Sophia drank her coffee. Thought about invisible things. Thought about doors that stayed open. She did not know yet what Leonardo Moretti wanted. She did not know yet whether kindness without a reason was possible from someone who lived the way he lived. But she knew something that the years had taught her, the thing that Ethan hadn't learned yet, because he was too young, and the world hadn't made it necessary yet. The most dangerous thing about truly generous people was not that they wanted something from you. It was that they made you want to trust again. And wanting to trust again after everything was the most dangerous thing of all. She rinsed her cup in the sink, listened to the city beginning to wake up outside, and made herself a promise she wasn't sure yet that she could keep. She would not disappear, not yet. Not until she understood exactly what she was disappearing from. 2 blocks away in the car that had been waiting outside her building since before she got home. Not surveillance, the driver would say. If asked, not watching, just making sure she got home safe. Leonardo Moretti sat in the dark and read the same text message 3 times. The one that said debt satisfied, account closed. He had arranged it 3 days ago. He had told himself it was repayment. Settling accounts. The cleanest way to close the gap between what his family owed the woman who had made his sister's last months bearable. That was what he had told himself. Sitting in the dark now, listening to the city quiet down around him, he was less certain about his own story. Because something had happened on that balcony tonight. He had expected a conversation. He had expected gratitude, or suspicion, or anger. He had run scenarios in his head for weeks, preparing for every version of how Sophia Bennett might respond to finding out she had been searched for, and he had prepared himself for all of them. What he had not prepared for was her saying Isabella's words back to him. She forgave him, before he even asked. He had built a very careful life around not being vulnerable. He had built walls and rules and systems, and he had been very methodical about it, because he understood better than most people what happened when powerful men showed their weak places. But sitting across from Sophia Bennett on a balcony over Fifth Avenue, he had felt one of those walls do something it had not done in a very long time. It had shifted, just slightly, just enough to feel the cold air through the crack. He looked at the dark window of her building. Then he told his driver to take him home. He had done what he came to do. The rest was up to her. The rest had always been up to her. He understood that in a way that was new and strange to him, because his entire life had been built on the opposite principle, the principle that the right move was to act, to decide to control whatever needed to be controlled. Sophia Bennett was not something to be controlled. He had understood that the moment she picked up her tray and turned to face him in the ballroom, shaking and composed at the same time, refusing to pretend she wasn't afraid, and refusing to let the fear stop her. He had understood that even before she told him about Isabella's forgiveness. He understood it completely now. Whatever came next, he would not be the one to decide it. The car pulled away from the curb and merged into the early morning thinning of traffic, and Leonardo sat in the back seat with his hands folded and thought about a woman who had learned to disappear, and thought about the ways a person became visible again. She told herself she would not look for him. That was the promise she made on the subway ride to work Monday morning, 5 days after the Waldorf Astoria, standing in a packed car, with her hand around the overhead bar and her coffee cooling in her other hand. She would not look for him. She would not search his name. She would not turn over what had happened on that balcony, the way she had been turning it over every night since examining it from every angle until the edges were worn smooth. The debt was gone. That was real, and she would accept it because the alternative was finding the men who had come to her door and handing them $87,000 she did not have, and she was practical enough to understand that pride was a luxury she could not currently afford. But Leonardo Moretti was not someone she needed to think about anymore. That was what she told herself. She lasted 6 days. On the 7th day, she typed his name into the search bar. She told herself it was research. Due diligence. The responsible thing to do when a stranger had paid a significant debt on your behalf and claimed to want nothing in return. You found out who they were. You understood what you were dealing with. You did not simply take what had been given and pretend the giver did not exist. What she found was exactly what she expected, and nothing like what she expected at the same time. Leonardo Moretti, 58 years old. She stopped. 58. She had thought 40, maybe 45 at the outside. She went back to the photos. Something about him had been ageless, in the way that grief sometimes made people ageless, had filed away everything that wasn't essential and left behind something that did not belong to any particular decade. She continued reading. 58 years old. Third-generation Italian-American. Had expanded his family's construction and real estate holdings into a diversified empire over the past 20 years. 12 legitimate businesses named in financial filings. Extensive philanthropic work hospitals. Schools, a foundation for immigrant families that she had actually heard of, but had never connected to any particular name. And then the other part. The part that was everywhere once you knew to look for it, referenced in careful language by journalists who understood exactly how careful they needed to be. Rumors of connections to organized crime going back 3 generations. A federal investigation 8 years ago that had concluded without charges. 2 associates named in court filings who had died under circumstances that were officially ruled accidents and unofficially discussed in very different terms. She read for an hour. When she stopped, she sat with the information the way she sat with complicated things, not trying to resolve it immediately, just letting it settle. The man who had paid her debt and told her she was free was also a man who existed inside a world where people disappeared when they became inconvenient. She understood that. She also understood and could not quite make herself unfeel the way his face had changed when she said Isabella's name. Those two things did not resolve into anything clean. She closed the browser. She went to make Ethan's dinner and did not think about Leonardo Moretti for the rest of the evening. She only half succeeded. The following Tuesday, she was working the morning shift at the cafe on Amsterdam Avenue, where she had been picking up hours for 3 years. A small place, neighborhood regulars. The kind of work where she knew people's orders before they reached the counter. And the owner, a woman named Gloria, who was 72, and had survived 3 recessions and a husband who left and did not apologize, treated her staff like people rather than equipment. It was a good job. It paid less than the event work, but it was consistent, and consistent mattered more than she used to think. She was behind the counter at 8:47 in the morning when the door opened. She knew before she looked up. Not because she heard anything distinctive. Not because of any particular sound or movement. Just something, the way the air in the room shifted slightly, the way the conversation at the nearest table stalled for half a second before resuming. She looked up. Leonardo Moretti was standing at the door of a neighborhood coffee shop in a dark coat, looking slightly out of place, the way a very large, very expensive piece of furniture looked out of place. In an ordinary room, not wrong exactly, just calibrated for a different scale. He looked at her. She looked at him. He walked to the counter. "Small coffee?" he said. "Black." Sophia looked at him for 1 beat, 2 beats. Then she turned and poured the coffee and set it in front of him. $4, she said. He put a 5 on the counter and did not ask for change and took his coffee to the table by the window. Not the closest table, not a table that put him in her line of sight every time she looked up, but a corner table where he was visible if she chose to look and ignorable if she chose not to. She chose not to look. She was very deliberate about it. She took 4 more orders, wiped down 2 tables, restocked the pastry case, and did not look at the corner table for 31 minutes. Then she looked. He was reading something on his phone. The coffee was mostly finished. He had not looked at her once. Gloria appeared beside her, ostensibly to check the espresso machine, actually to say quietly, "That man paid for the Henderson family's order, the whole table. Asked me not to say who." Sophia stared at the espresso machine. "That's their 3rd time in here," Gloria continued. "Every time he's here, someone's bill gets paid." "He's been here before. Twice, last week." Gloria adjusted something on the machine that did not need adjusting. "I thought you knew him, the way he looked at you when he came in." Sophia said nothing. At 9:23, Leonardo stood, put on his coat, and walked out. He did not look at her on his way to the door. She looked at the corner table. He had left the exact change for the coffee on a napkin. Not a tip, not extra exactly. $4, and under the napkin, a single piece of paper, folded once. She told herself not to pick it up. She picked it up. It said, "I'm not following you. I come here sometimes when I need somewhere quiet. I won't come back if you'd rather I didn't. L." She folded the paper and put it in her apron pocket. He came back the following Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that. She did not speak to him directly for 3 weeks. This was not avoidance, or rather it was deliberate non-engagement, which she recognized was its own kind of attention. She acknowledged him the way she acknowledged every regular customer with professional efficiency and no particular warmth. His coffee was ready when he reached the counter. She did not chat. She did not ask questions. He did not push. He came on Tuesdays 8:45 to 9:30, ordered the same coffee, sat at the same corner table. Did not try to create moments with her, did not engineer reasons for them to talk. She found this more unsettling than if he had pushed. It was in the 4th week that things shifted. She had come in early that Tuesday, a supply delivery that needed to be checked before Gloria arrived, and she was alone in the back going through invoices when the front door opened at 8:15, 30 minutes ahead of schedule, and she heard the bell and came out to find Leonardo Moretti already at the counter, coat still on, and something different about him. Nothing obvious. Nothing she could have pointed to if someone asked. Just the specific quality of stillness that she had started to recognize in him, The stillness that was not calm, but its opposite. The stillness of a person holding something at arm's length that was trying very hard to get close. "You're early," she said. "I know." He paused. "I have a meeting at 10 that I've been thinking about since yesterday, and I needed somewhere that wasn't my office." She looked at him. He looked back. "Do you want coffee?" she said. "Please." She poured it. She set it on the counter, and then because Gloria was not here yet, and the cafe was empty, and she was tired of performing the professional distance that had started to feel less like protection and more like habit. "What's the meeting?" He wrapped both hands around the cup. "There's a man who has worked for me for 15 years, he said, "and I've been finding things over the past 6 months that suggest he has been working against me for most of that time." She leaned against the counter. "Victor Romano," she said. His eyes sharpened immediately. "You know him. I looked you up," she said. "After the party. His name came up in an article. There was a quote from him he was defending you in some business dispute. He called you the most principled man he knew." "People who say things like that publicly are usually rehearsing," Leonardo said. "What did he do?" He was quiet for a moment. "The debt your father owed," he said slowly. "The men who came to your door. I've been investigating the origin of that debt, who called it in, who sent the collectors, who decided now was the time to apply pressure." He stopped. "Victor arranged it." The cafe was very quiet. "Why?" Sophia said. "Because he found out I was looking for you." Leonardo set the cup down. He had been watching my communications for over a year. When he saw me investigating the woman who helped Isabella, he started his own investigation. And he realized that whoever you were to me, whether I had even met you yet or not, you were someone I was determined to find. And Victor understands better than almost anyone that the way to weaken someone is through the things they care about. She heard what he wasn't saying. She heard it very clearly. "He made sure I was desperate," she said, "so that when you appeared to help me, I would already be afraid, so that whatever you offered would look more like rescue." "Yes." "So that I would be in your debt." "Yes." He wanted to ensure that if I found you, the encounter would be complicated by obligation, that you would have reason to distrust whatever I gave you, that it would be harder for us to— He stopped. "For us to what?" she said. "For anything genuine to develop," he said simply. The word genuine landed in the quiet space between them. Sophia looked at this man, 58 years old, built by decades of a world that did not reward softness, sitting in a neighborhood coffee shop, with both hands around a cup of black coffee, telling her that someone had engineered her desperation as a weapon against him. "Did you know it was him?" she asked. "When you paid the debt, I suspected. I confirmed it 2 days ago." "What are you going to do?" "I haven't decided." He lifted the coffee. "That's why I needed somewhere that wasn't my office." She was quiet for a moment. "He could have done more," she said. "If he knew about me before you found me, he could have done worse things than just calling in a debt." "I know." "Why didn't he—" "Because he's careful," Leonardo said. "And because he wanted to use you as a long-term piece, not as a blunt instrument. Victor is patient. He thinks in months and years, not days." He paused. "Which is why he's been effective for 15 years, and why I should have seen it sooner. Would you have, if you hadn't been looking for me, would you have found out?" He thought about that honestly. "Maybe," he said. But not as quickly. Gloria arrived at 8:40, took in the situation with the economy of someone who had seen a great many situations and found reasons to remain very occupied in the back for the rest of Leonardo's visit. He left at 9:30 on the dot. Before he went, he stopped at the counter. "I want to ask you something," he said. She waited. "Isabella's letters mentioned that you read to her, that you chose the books yourself because she told you she was too tired to choose." "Yes?" "What did you read?" She hadn't expected that question. "Willa Cather," she said after a moment. "My Antonia. And some Chekhov short stories. And the last 2 weeks she asked me to read her poetry, Mary Oliver. Something crossed his face that she was getting better at reading. She loved Mary Oliver, he said. I know. She made me read The Summer Day 4 times. She made me read it to her once when she was 17, Leonardo said. I was very impatient about it. I thought poetry was something people pretended to understand. He looked at Sophia. I've read it 100 times since she died. He put on his coat. He walked out. Sophia stood at the counter for a full minute after the door closed. Then she went to the back and found a legal pad and wrote down The Summer Day, Mary Oliver, as if she needed reminding. She did not. The first time she spoke to him as something other than a customer was 5 weeks after the Waldorf. She had finished her shift and was leaving through the front door when she found him still at the corner table. It was 2:15, not his usual departure time, and he had a legal pad in front of him covered in handwriting, and he was frowning at it the way people frowned at things that were not cooperating. She stopped. She should have kept walking. That looks like it's losing, she said. He looked up. It is, he said. I have a board meeting tomorrow, and I'm trying to present the case for restructuring the foundation in a way that doesn't sound like what it actually is, which is removing 3 people who have been using charitable giving as personal leverage. She looked at the legal pad. She should keep walking. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. Show me, she said. He looked at her for a moment like he was recalibrating. Then he turned the legal pad so she could see it. For 45 minutes, they sat at the corner table, and Sophia, who had spent 3 years helping plan and execute events for the city's most powerful nonprofit boards, which meant she knew exactly how those boards operated and what arguments landed with trustees who had spent decades learning to make decisions that served their interests while sounding like they served the public, walked him through the reframe. Not about removing people, about mission alignment, about accountability structures, about the difference between charitable work that built community and charitable work that built personal networks, and how any board serious about its mandate should be eager to make that distinction. Leonardo listened. He did not interrupt. He did not explain to her why she was wrong. He took notes. At the end, he set the pen down and looked at her. Where did you learn this? He said. Working for the people who sit on these boards, she said. You understand how a thing works when you're serving the food at the meeting instead of sitting at the table. People talk differently when they don't notice you. You've been invisible so long you know everything. She wasn't sure if that was an observation or a compliment. She decided to take it as neither. You should open with the mission statement, she said. Their own mission statement. Make them defend a no vote against their own language. That's ruthless, he said. You want results. He looked at something in the middle distance. Yes, he said, I do. After that, the Tuesday routine became something different. Not a routine with clear edges and professional distance. Something with more give in it, the way conversations shifted over time, from functional to real, from the surface of things to what was underneath. He told her about the foundation. She told him about the events she worked, the invisible economy of people who kept the city's upper tier running smoothly, and were never remembered at the end of the night. He told her about the restructuring of his legitimate businesses, the slow work of separating what had started as necessity from what had become identity. She told him about Ethan, not everything, not the weight of it, but pieces. Ethan's talent for mathematics. The school program he had been accepted to and couldn't afford the materials for until 2 weeks later she received an anonymous package containing the exact materials required. She called him about the package. This was the first time she had called him on the number he had written at the bottom of that original note. The school materials, she said when he answered. He's talented, Leonardo said. The program coordinator mentioned him specifically when I made the donation to the school fund. You donated to the school fund. The program coordinator said they had been working with a significantly reduced budget. It seemed like an obvious Leonardo. Silence. You can't keep doing this, she said. I'm not doing anything for you specifically. I donated to a school that Ethan attends, a school that serves 400 students, he said. Ethan is one of 400. You know exactly what you're doing. Yes, he said without any apology in his voice. I know what I'm doing. The question is whether what I'm doing is wrong. She didn't have an answer for that. She sat with the phone pressed to her ear in her kitchen. Ethan's school materials spread on the table. I don't know how to accept things, she finally said. I know. I've been on my own so long that receiving feels like debt, even when I know it isn't. I know that too. How? He was quiet for a moment. Because I spent 20 years giving and never receiving, he said. I built an entire life around being the person everyone came to, the person who solved problems and removed obstacles and took care of things. And I told myself that was power. But it was also the most complete way I knew to never be vulnerable. He paused. You learn to receive the same way you learned to give Sophia, slowly, by deciding the person offering is worth the risk. She closed her eyes. The kitchen was quiet except for the city outside the window. Am I worth the risk? He said. And she heard it, the thing underneath the control, the thing that made the question honest in a way she hadn't expected. Because I'm aware that what I am and what I've been is not a simple thing to trust, and I'm aware I'm asking you to. She thought about what she had read about him. She thought about the federal investigation that ended without charges. She thought about the associates who had died in accidents that no one officially disputed. She thought about a corner table, a quiet cafe, a man who left the exact change and a note saying he would not return if she asked. I don't know yet, she said. That's honest, he said. I'm always honest. I know. And she could hear something that might have been a smile in his voice, not performed, not charming, just real. It's the most unsettling thing about you. She laughed before she meant to. It surprised her. It surprised her enough that she stopped and noted it, the specific lightness of it, the way it felt like something she hadn't used in a long time. Good night, Leonardo, she said. Good night, Sophia. Kennen. The information arrived on a Thursday. Carla, the server from the Waldorf, who had her own network of contacts built from 15 years in the city's event circuit, sent her a text at 6 in the evening. Heard something. Not sure if you care. Victor Romano is asking questions about you, specifically about your brother. 2 people I know got approached this week by someone working for him. Thought you should know. Sophia read the text standing on the subway platform. She read it again. She thought about what Leonardo had told her. Victor is patient. He thinks in months and years. She thought about Ethan at home right now doing his math homework wearing headphones, completely unaware. She called Leonardo. He answered on the second ring. Victor is having me investigated, she said. Specifically Ethan. No pause. No performance of surprise. Since when? This week, 2 people Carla knows were approached. Carla who? Server. She worked the Waldorf event. She has contacts throughout the circuit. Sophia kept her voice level. What does he want with Ethan? Leverage, Leonardo said, and his voice had changed, not louder, not more emotional, but quieter, which she was beginning to understand was more dangerous. He's not going to hurt Ethan. Victor doesn't operate that way. He would use Ethan to create a situation, place him somewhere compromising, manufacture a problem that requires a solution, and then present himself as the solution in a way that costs me. What kind of problem? I don't know yet, but I will. Leonardo, I'm going to handle this. That's what worries me, she said. When you say you're going to handle it, I need to understand what that means. A pause. It means I'm going to make sure Victor understands that your brother is completely outside the boundaries of whatever disagreement exists between him and me. I'm going to make that very clear. And if he doesn't listen, then I'm going to remove him from a position where he can make decisions. How? The pause was longer this time. Sophia, he said. Don't do that, she said. Don't use my name as a way to not answer the question. Another pause. I'm not going to hurt him, Leonardo said. I want you to hear that clearly. Whatever else you know about the world I live in, whatever you read when you looked me up, and you did look me up, I know you did. What I'm telling you is that I'm not going to respond to Victor with violence. I haven't operated that way in a long time. Not since... He stopped. Not for a long time. Not since Isabella, she said. The silence was the answer. She made you change, Sophia said. Not a question. She made me see what I was becoming, he said. And she was the only person I couldn't lose, and then I lost her anyway. So... He exhaled. Yes. After Isabella, I changed how I operated. Not completely. Not all at once. But the direction changed. Sophia stood on the subway platform with the train coming, and her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Ethan has robotics practice tomorrow at 4, she said. I want to pick him up myself. I'll make sure someone is watching the school, not intrusively, just present. I don't want him scared. He won't know. You're sure? Sophia. And this time her name in his voice was not deflection, it was something else, something steadier. I'm sure. She got on the train. She stood in the moving car and held the overhead bar and thought about the specific feeling of trusting someone you were not sure you should trust, the way it sat in the chest, differently than certainty, heavier and more alive at the same time. She thought about what he had said. You learn to receive the same way you learn to give. Slowly. By deciding the person offering is worth the risk. She didn't know yet. She was starting to think she might find out. At 9 that night, her phone buzzed. Not Leonardo. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. She answered. Miss Bennett. A man's voice. Smooth and measured in a way that announced itself as calculated. My name is Victor Romano. I believe we have some mutual acquaintances. Sophia's hand tightened on the phone. She sat down. She kept her voice completely even. I don't think we do, she said. Leonardo speaks very highly of you, Victor said. He doesn't speak highly of many people. That makes you notable. What do you want? To introduce myself, to let you know that I'm aware of you, and to tell you something that might be useful as a professional courtesy. A pause perfectly timed. Leonardo is a man who collects things that matter to him, and then loses them. His father, his mother, his sister. And each time he loses someone, he becomes a little less of the man he was before. Another pause. I care about Leonardo. I have for 15 years. I don't want to watch him lose something else and take it out on the people around him. Is that a warning? It's an observation. Mr. Romano, Sophia said. I appreciate the call. I'm going to hang up now. Your brother is very talented, Victor said quickly. The robotics program is impressive. He should have every opportunity to develop that talent. The line went very quiet. Say that again, Sophia said. I said your brother. I heard what you said. Her voice was absolutely flat. And I want you to understand something. I have spent my entire adult life being afraid of people who used quiet voices to make threats sound like concern. You are not the first. You are not the most frightening. And you are not going to use my brother to make a point. She stopped. Don't call this number again. She hung up. She sat very still for a moment. Then she called Leonardo. He answered before it rang twice. He called me, she said. 3 seconds of silence. What did he say? She told him. Every word. Her voice was steady the entire time. When she finished, Leonardo was quiet for long enough that she thought the call might have dropped. He mentioned Ethan, he said. Yes. By name. Yes. Something shifted in the quality of his silence. She had been learning to read him, and she read this one clearly. Not the dangerous quiet, not the controlled stillness. This was something older and colder, the particular silence of a man arriving at a decision he had been postponing. Tomorrow morning, he said. I need you to take Ethan to the foundation offices. There's a youth engineering workshop running all day. I'll arrange for him to attend. He'll be safe there. I'll have people with him. And me. You go to work, you live your normal day. Let him think he hasn't changed anything. You have a plan, she said. I've had a plan, he said. I've been waiting to see how far Victor was willing to go before I moved. Now you know. Now I know. She heard something in his voice that she had not heard before. Not the controlled authority of a man used to being obeyed, and not the careful honesty she had been discovering in quiet corners of their conversation. Something harder. Something that had been waiting under everything else, patient and cold, like water under ice. Leonardo, she said. Sophia. Don't become someone she would have been ashamed of, she said. Don't let him make you into that. The silence lasted so long she thought he had shut down. Then quietly, that's the only thing that still works on me. I know, she said. Good night. Good night. She set the phone face down on the kitchen table. Through the wall she could hear the faint sound of Ethan's music, the playlist he played when he was deep in concentration, fast and structured, the kind of thing that mapped to the way his brain worked when it was solving something. She sat in the quiet kitchen and listened to the muffled rhythm of her brother's music. Tomorrow, he would go to an engineering workshop at a foundation he had never heard of, and he would not know that the reason was that a man who had been her employer's trusted advisor for 15 years had spoken his name on a phone call as a signal, and that signal had moved something into place that she did not fully understand and could not control. She understood enough. She understood that she was no longer standing at the edge of something. She was already inside it. And the question was no longer whether Leonardo Moretti was worth trusting. The question was what kind of person she was going to be in the middle of everything that was coming, whether she would go back to invisible, which was safe, or whether she would stay visible, which was terrifying, which was the only thing that felt true. She got up. She checked the lock on the front door. She turned off the kitchen light. And somewhere across the city, in an office that looked out over the same skyline she had been watching all her life, she knew a man was making decisions about how far he was willing to go. She knew with a clarity that surprised her that she was the reason he was trying to stay on the right side of that line. She didn't know yet whether that was enough to hold him there, but for the first time in a very long time, she found herself hoping it was. Ethan thought the engineering workshop was a school opportunity. That was what Sophia told him Wednesday morning while he was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still half asleep, his hair doing the thing it did when he hadn't combed it yet, standing up on the left side in a way that made him look exactly like their father at that age, which was something Sophia had stopped telling him because it made his face do something complicated. A foundation workshop. He looked up from his bowl. What foundation? The Moretti Foundation. They run youth programs. Your teacher submitted your name. She kept her voice even. It's an all-day session. Robotics and applied engineering. They have equipment the school doesn't. Ethan considered this the way he considered everything, methodically, without performance, working through the angles. Is it free? Yes. Why? Because it's a foundation, Sophia said. That's what foundations do. He ate another spoonful of cereal. Okay, he said. Do I need to bring anything? That was Ethan, 16 years old and already built for the essentials. She dropped him at the foundation building at 8:30 and watched him walk through the door with his backpack and his quiet confidence. And she stood on the sidewalk for a moment after he disappeared inside and told herself this was temporary. This was one day. Victor Romano had made a phone call, and she had made a decision, and Ethan would spend the day doing exactly the kind of work he loved in a safe building with people she had been assured were trustworthy. She turned and walked to the subway. She was 3 blocks away when her phone buzzed. Leonardo. He's inside. 2 people with him at all times. He doesn't know. She typed back, thank you. She put the phone in her pocket. She thought about what she had said to Leonardo the night before. Don't become someone she would have been ashamed of. She had meant it as a lifeline, a reminder. But now in the cold morning with the city moving around her, she understood it could also be read as a weight. The worst kind of weight, the kind you put on someone because you love them, because you believe in who they can be. And that belief becomes its own kind of pressure. She hoped she hadn't done that. She was not sure yet what she was doing at all. The cafe was busy that morning, in the particular way Wednesdays got busy the people who worked from home and treated the coffee shop as an office. The retired couples who had turned their morning coffee into a social event. The young mothers with strollers who clustered near the window and talked about things that were important in ways the world didn't always acknowledge. Sophia moved through the shift with the automatic competence she had built over years, her hands doing the work, while her mind stayed with Ethan, stayed with Victor. Romano's voice on the phone stayed with Leonardo, and the decision she could hear him making in the silence of last night's call. At 11:30, Gloria set a cup of coffee at the counter in front of Sophia. "Sit," she said. "I'm on shift." "It's slow, and I'm the owner, and I said sit." Sophia sat. Gloria settled on the stool beside her with her own coffee and the posture of a woman who had decided something was going to be said. "That man," Gloria said. "The Tuesday man." Gloria. "I'm 72 years old, and I've been watching people walk in and out of this place for 30 years, and I know the difference between a man who wants something and a man who needs something." She wrapped both hands around her cup. "He needs something, and it's not coffee." Sophia looked at her hands. "It's complicated," she said. "Everything real is complicated," Gloria said. "Simple things aren't worth the trouble." She paused. "Is he dangerous?" Sophia thought about how to answer that honestly. "He lives in a world where dangerous things happen," she said finally. "I don't think he's dangerous to me." "Do you know that, or do you want to know that?" The question landed with the particular accuracy of something said by someone who had lived long enough to know the difference. Sophia was quiet. "Both," she admitted. Gloria nodded. Not approvingly, not disapprovingly. Just acknowledging. "My husband," Gloria said, "was not a simple man. He came from a family that had done things. Not criminal exactly, but close enough that it mattered. And I spent the first 5 years of our marriage waiting for the thing that would make me sorry I'd trusted him." She took a sip of coffee. "It never came. He was just a man who had grown up inside something he was trying to grow out of. And that kind of man needs someone patient enough to see what he's growing into, not just what he came from." Sophia looked at her. "He left," Sophia said. "You said he left." "He did. 15 years in, he left." Gloria smiled, and it was a real smile, clear-eyed and without self-pity. But the 15 years were worth having. Some things don't last, and they're still worth having. She stood, picked up her coffee, and headed back toward the counter. "I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you that complicated is not the same as wrong." Leonardo called at 2 in the afternoon. She was on her break sitting in the small courtyard behind the cafe, and she answered on the first ring. "Victor met with 2 board members this morning," he said without preamble. "He's building a case to replace me as the operational head of the foundation. He's framing it as a governance reform." "Is that possible? Can he do that?" "With enough board votes, yes. The foundation is structured with significant board authority. I designed it that way deliberately because I didn't want it to be a personal vehicle. I wanted it to be real." He paused. "Victor knows the structure better than almost anyone. He helped me design it." "So he's using what you built against you?" "Yes." "What does he gain if he controls the foundation?" "Leverage over 12 charitable partnerships, access to donor networks across 3 states, and the public legitimacy that comes from running a respected philanthropic institution legitimacy that makes the other parts of his business significantly easier to operate." He stopped. "He doesn't want to destroy me. He wants to replace me. He wants to become what I am, but cleaner because he won't have the history I have." Sophia thought about this. "And me," she said. "Where do I fit in this? He thinks you're the reason I've been changing how I operate," Leonardo said. He told one of the board members, I have the recording, he told them that I've been making sentimental decisions lately, that there's a woman in my life who is affecting my judgment. Am I? Yes, he said immediately. But not the way he means it. What way does he mean it? He means it as weakness. And the way you mean it, a pause, not the calculated kind, the kind that came from actually thinking, I mean it as the first good judgment I've made in years, he said. Sophia looked at the small square of sky above the courtyard. Your board meeting is tomorrow, she said. Yes. Did you use the mission statement the way I told you? I have 40 pages of materials built around it. Use it in the first 5 minutes, she said. Before anyone else sets the frame. If you let Victor establish the narrative before you speak, you spend the whole meeting playing defense. I know. Say the mission statement out loud, she said. Don't quote it, say it from memory. It tells the room you actually know what the foundation is for. You're coaching me. I'm talking fast because I have 4 minutes left on my break, she said. Do you have the votes you need? I have 7 confirmed. I need 9. Who are you missing? Margaret Okafor and James Chu. Both of them are. Okafor chairs the Medical Ethics Committee at Columbia, Sophia said. I've worked 6 of her events. She cares about process more than outcomes. She needs to feel like the right procedure was followed, not just that the right decision was made. She thought fast. Chu lost his daughter 3 years ago. He became significantly more philanthropically active after that. He responds to stories, not strategy. Silence on the line. How do you know that? Leonardo said. I carried their champagne, she said. People talk at parties. I listen. She stood. For Okafor present the governance structure you're proposing as the most procedurally sound option. Walk her through every step. For Chu, tell him about a family the foundation helped. Specifically, a real one. Don't give him data, give him a person. Sophia. I have to go back inside. Call me after the meeting. She hung up. She stood in the courtyard for 5 more seconds. Then she went back to work. Hi. Leonardo called at 6:47 that evening. She was on the subway home, standing in the crowded car, and she pressed the phone hard against her ear to hear him over the noise of the train. 9 to 5, he said. She closed her eyes. Okafor, she said, voted with me. And she asked 3 procedural questions during Victor's presentation that I believe she asked specifically to slow his momentum. Chu. I told him about a family from the Bronx, Leonardo said, a father who lost his job during his wife's cancer treatment. We covered the gap 6 months of expenses medical coordination job placement after. He voted before I even finished the story. Sophia exhaled. And Victor? Victor sat through the vote and then stood up and congratulated me and said he was glad the board had such a clear sense of direction. A pause. He was completely controlled. He looked like a man who had expected to lose. That detail landed wrong. He expected to lose, she said. That was my read. Yes. Then why did he do it? A beat. I don't know, Leonardo said, and she heard something in his voice that she had not heard before, the particular unease of a man who had solved the problem in front of him and realized it was not the real problem. It was too visible, too direct. Victor doesn't work that way. He doesn't make moves this obvious, unless the obvious move is a misdirection. The train lurched. She grabbed the bar. He was watching, she said. He was watching how you handled it, how you responded, what resources you drew on. Yes, Leonardo said. That's what I think too. He knows about me. He knows I helped you prepare. Possibly. Not possibly. He had people watching you go into that meeting. He had the board meeting transcript within the hour. He's been 15 years in your organization. He knows everyone you talk to and how. She kept her voice low. He's not done. The board was a test. I know. So what is he actually planning? This time the pause was long enough that the train went through a tunnel and she lost signal for 20 seconds and came back to him mid-sentence. Can't move against the foundation again. Not directly. So he'll move against something I care about through a different angle. His voice was completely even, which she was learning meant the opposite of calm. He'll move against you. The train was noisy and crowded, and no one was paying attention to a woman in a work uniform standing near the doors. But Sophia felt something shift, a specific interior stillness that came over her sometimes in the worst moments. The same stillness that had carried her through her parents' deaths, and the debt collectors at her door. The place inside her that went quiet when the situation was most serious. "How?" she said. "I don't know yet, but I'm finding out. Leonardo, if you find out and the answer involves doing something that—" She stopped. "If you find out and the answer is something you can't undo, I need you to call me first. Sophia. I mean it. Call me first, before you decide. I am asking you this clearly." A long pause. "All right," he said. "Promise me." Another pause, shorter. "I promise," he said. She got off at her stop and walked home and made dinner and sat with Ethan while he talked about the workshop, the equipment they had used, the problem they had been given to solve the other kids, who were actually pretty good, which from Ethan was high praise, and she listened and asked the right questions, and was completely present for all of it. Inside, she was calculating. Victor moved faster than she expected. It was 4 days after the board meeting, a Sunday, and Sophia was at the apartment folding laundry while Ethan was at a friend's house when her phone rang with a number she didn't know. She answered anyway. She had learned to answer anyway. "Miss Bennett?" A woman's voice this time. Professional. Careful. "My name is Dana Reeves. I'm a reporter for the Times. I'm working on a piece about the Moretti Foundation, and I'd like to ask you a few questions." Sophia sat down slowly. "How did you get this number?" she said. "I received it from a source who suggested you had relevant information about the Foundation's relationship with certain business interests." Victor. "What kind of piece?" Sophia said. "A governance story. We've received documents suggesting the Foundation has been used to redirect funds in ways that benefit private business holdings. We've also received information suggesting that Leonardo Moretti has recently made several personal and financial decisions that may indicate outside influence on Foundation operations." A pause. "Your name came up in that context, Miss Bennett." "As what?" "As someone close to Mr. Moretti with a recent history of financial distress who received significant assistance from parties connected to his organization." Sophia understood in that moment what Victor had done. The debt payoff, the school donation, the anonymous assistance, all of it documented, all of it now in the hands of a reporter, framed not as generosity, but as payment, not as connection, but as transaction. He had turned the kindness into evidence. "I'm not going to comment on that," Sophia said. "Miss Bennett, if you don't provide context, the story will run with the information we have. That information portrays you as someone who accepted financial payments from a man with connections to organized crime. If there's a different explanation—" "I said I'm not going to comment." She kept her voice absolutely flat. "Don't call this number again." She hung up. She sat with the laundry in her lap and did not move for a full minute. Then she called Leonardo. He answered in 2 rings. "Victor gave a reporter my name," she said. "He framed everything, the debt, the school, all of it as payments. He's making it look like I'm being kept." The silence on the other end was 5 seconds long. "Are you at home?" Leonardo said. "Yes." "I'll be there in 20 minutes." "You don't need to." 20 minutes, he said. "Please." He was there in 18. She buzzed him up and opened the apartment door, and he walked in and took in the room with the quick, comprehensive scan of someone trained to read spaces, and then he looked at her. She looked back. "I'm not scared," she said, which was mostly true. "I know." He was still in his coat. He looked like he had left wherever he was immediately. "I'm the one who's scared." That stopped her. "Of what?" "Of what this cost you," he said. "I told you when I first found you I didn't want your kindness to become a debt. And then I paid your debt and gave Ethan things and arranged people to watch the school. And every one of those things that I thought I was doing for you is now being used to make you look like something you're not." He looked at her steadily. "I brought this to you. Victor brought this to me. Victor is doing this because of me. Victor is doing this because Victor is Victor," she said. "He would have found a way regardless. That's what people like him do. They find the cleanest available line to what you love, and they press on it." She paused on the word love and did not take it back. You didn't create Victor. He made his own choices. Leonardo looked at her. Something moved in his face. You defend me better than I defend myself, he said. I'm not defending you. I'm being accurate. Is there a difference? She looked at him for a moment. Sit down, she said. He sat. She brought 2 glasses of water, not because either of them needed water, but because having something to do with her hands made the conversation feel less like standing on a ledge, and she sat across from him at the kitchen table where she had made so many difficult calculations in the past 3 years. Tell me what he has, she said. Everything. I need to understand the full picture before I can think about how to respond. He told her. It took 30 minutes, because Leonardo was precise in the way that people were precise when they had spent their lives needing to know exactly what they had and what they didn't. He laid out what Victor had given the reporter. The documentation of the debt payoff, the school donation records, the details of the security arrangement around Ethan, which meant Victor had someone inside the foundation building, which was its own problem, the board meeting minutes, which had been leaked within hours, and something else. A photograph. Of what? Sophia said. Of us, he said. At the cafe, 2 weeks ago, sitting at the corner table, you had the legal pad. He stopped. It's not a compromising photograph. It's a photograph of 2 people talking at a coffee shop. But with the context Victor is building, it becomes evidence of whatever story he's trying to tell. Sophia thought about that Tuesday, the legal pad. 45 minutes of working through the board presentation. I helped you, she said, and he's going to make it look like you paid me to. Yes. She folded her hands on the table. There's a way to get ahead of this, she said. Leonardo looked at her. You tell the story first, she said. Your way, before the reporter publishes. If you go to the Times yourself, not to the reporter Victor planted, but to the editorial level, and you provide context, and you provide the full record of what the foundation has done, and you do it on the record. I don't give interviews, he said. I know. I have never given an interview in my life. My legal team would. Your legal team didn't stop Victor from being inside your organization for 15 years, she said. Not unkindly, just plainly. Victor is counting on you doing what you always do, which is staying silent and letting the institution handle it. He's built a version of events that fills the silence. If you stay silent, that version wins. She met his eyes. You said you've been changing how you operate. This is the change. You talk. He was looking at her in a way she was beginning to recognize the particular quality of attention he gave things that were rearranging how he understood something. You would do it with me, he said. Not a question. If you want me to. You understand what that means, he said. You on the record, your name in the paper, your history, the debt your parents, all of it, in a national publication. I'm aware. You've been invisible for years. This is the opposite. I know. She looked at him steadily. But I'm tired of being invisible. And I'm not going to let Victor Romano decide what my story means. Something changed in Leonardo's face. Not the controlled shift she had seen that first night on the balcony. Something that broke through the control entirely for just a moment, like light through a crack in something that had been sealed for a long time. Sophia, he said. Don't, she said. I'm not going to say anything. You're going to say something that makes this feel different than it already feels, she said. And I need to think clearly right now. So don't. He looked at her. He nodded. All right, he said. We plan. They worked at the kitchen table for 3 hours. Ethan came home at 7 to find 2 adults he had not expected occupying his kitchen, one of whom he recognized as connected to the engineering workshop, and the other of whom was his sister, looking more focused than she usually looked on a Sunday evening. Ethan assessed the situation with 16-year-old pragmatism. Are you staying for dinner? He asked Leonardo. Leonardo looked at Sophia. If it's not an imposition, he said. Sophia looked at Ethan. There's pasta, she said. It feeds 3. Ethan nodded and went to wash his hands, and Leonardo watched this domestic ordinary exchange with an expression that Sophia, glancing up from the legal pad, caught for just a second before he rearranged it. He looked like a man who had forgotten what ordinary felt like a man who had been standing outside a window for a long time and had just been invited in. She looked back down at the legal pad. During dinner, Ethan asked Leonardo about the foundation's engineering equipment, and Leonardo answered with the specific knowledge of someone who had actually paid attention to what was in the building, and the conversation between them became technical. Fast robotic systems, load-bearing calculations, the engineering problem Ethan's team had solved at the workshop, and Sophia sat at the end of the table and listened and ate her pasta, and felt something happen in her chest that she did not have a name for. It was something like peace, temporary and fragile and real. After dinner, Ethan disappeared to his room, and Sophia and Leonardo washed the dishes at the kitchen sink, him washing her drying because the sink was small, and it had happened naturally without discussion, and it was the most ordinary thing she had done with another person in years. "He's exceptional," Leonardo said. "I know," Sophia said. "Isabella would have liked him." She dried a glass and set it on the rack. She would have asked him 100 questions and answered none of his, she said. That's how she was. Yes. He handed her another glass. That's exactly how she was. They finished the dishes. Leonardo put on his coat and she walked him to the door, and they stood in the hallway. "Tomorrow, I call my contact at the Times editorial desk," he said. "Yes." "You're certain about being on the record?" "I'm certain." He looked at her. "I need to tell you something," he said, "before this becomes a public record, and anything I say could be construed as I need to say it while it's just between us." She waited. "What I felt when Victor targeted you," he said, "when he called and mentioned Ethan's name. It was not strategic. It was not about weakness or leverage or the organization." He met her eyes. "It was the feeling of someone threatening what matters to me most. And I'm telling you that clearly, because you asked me to be honest, and because what's coming, the interview, the record, it will make things complicated, and I don't want the complicated things to obscure something that is actually simple." She stood in the doorway. "What's the simple thing?" she said. "You matter to me," he said, genuinely, without agenda. "You matter to me in the way that very few things have ever mattered to me, and I'm not asking you to do anything about that. I'm just telling you, because I made a decision 3 years ago when my sister died, that I was done saying things too late." Sophia looked at him. She thought about the invisible life she had built, the careful erasure, the years of being the person no one remembered at the end of the night. She thought about what he had said the first night, the woman who asked for nothing. She thought about what she now knew of him, the walls and the coldness, and the thing underneath both of those, the thing Isabella had seen and written about in letters and trusted Sophia to find. "I know," she said. He nodded. She watched him walk down the hall and call the elevator. She stood in the doorway until the elevator doors closed. Then she shut her own door and leaned her back against it and stood in the quiet hallway of her apartment, in the life she had been surviving for 3 years, and felt the particular sensation of something shifting, the way the ground felt different before you realized you had crossed a border. She pushed off the door. She picked up the legal pad from the kitchen table. She sat down and kept planning. Because Victor Romano had made a mistake. He had assumed that the way to unmake Leonardo Moretti was to take away what he loved. What Victor didn't understand, what he couldn't have known, because he had never seen it, because people like Victor didn't look at women like Sophia and see anything worth calculating, was that Sophia Bennett had been surviving impossible things since she was 23 years old. She didn't break under pressure. She organized under it. She flipped to a clean page on the legal pad. At the top, she wrote 2 words, Victor's timeline, and she started to build the counter. The legal pad had 12 pages of notes by the time Sophia finally went to bed that Sunday night. She had mapped Victor's timeline the way she mapped everything when she needed to think clearly, not by feeling, not by instinct, but by sequence. What he had done. When he had done it. What each move had been designed to produce. The debt collectors. The reporter. The photograph. The board meeting he had staged as a test rather than a real play. Each piece laid out in order until the pattern emerged. Victor was not trying to destroy Leonardo. He was trying to isolate him. Every move Victor had made was designed to remove something. Leonardo had the Foundation's trust, the board's confidence, and now Sofia herself. Either by turning her into a liability he would push away, or by damaging her reputation enough that the association became something she chose to escape. He was cutting the ropes one by one, leaving Leonardo standing alone on ground Victor controlled. She had stared at that realization for a long time. Then she had written at the bottom of the last page, "He thinks alone is where Leo is weakest." He's wrong. Alone is where Leo is most dangerous. Victor needs Leo isolated because Victor can't win a direct fight. She had underlined the last sentence 3 times. Then she had gone to bed and slept better than she had in a week. Monday morning she called the attorney. Not Leonardo's attorney, her own. A woman named Patricia Vance, who handled tenant disputes and small civil cases out of an office on 110th Street, and who had helped Sofia navigate the paperwork after her parents died. Patricia was not the kind of attorney who dealt with the New York Times, or with men like Victor Romano, and she said so plainly within the first 2 minutes of the call. "You need someone bigger than me for this," Patricia said. "I know," Sofia said. "I need you to help me find them." By noon she had a name. By 2 o'clock she had an appointment for Wednesday morning with a media law attorney who had 15 years of experience dealing with exactly the kind of reputational targeting Victor was running. She texted Leonardo, "I have a media attorney. Wednesday morning. Don't call the Times before then." He responded in 4 minutes. "Agreed. Who?" She sent the name. His response came back in 30 seconds. "Good choice." She put the phone down and went back to work. Tuesday came, and Leonardo was at the cafe at 8:45 as usual, which under the circumstances felt like a statement. He ordered his coffee and took his corner table, and 40 minutes passed in their established rhythm before Sofia's break gave her 10 minutes to sit across from him. "Victor knows about Wednesday," he said before she could speak. She went still. "How?" "He has someone in my legal team." Leonardo wrapped both hands around his cup. "I don't know who yet, but I sent a message to 3 people yesterday about the media attorney meeting. The content of that message was on Victor's desk by this morning." "How do you know it was on his desk?" "Because Victor called me this morning," Leonardo said. "First time he's called directly since the board meeting. He was cordial. He mentioned very casually that he hoped I was getting good legal advice." Sofia looked at him. "He's letting you know he knows," she said. "Yes." "That's not caution, that's arrogance." She thought fast. "He thinks he's far enough ahead that he can afford to show you he's watching, which means he's about to move." "That's my read too." "When?" "Soon, before Wednesday most likely. He wants to act before we get in front of the Times narrative." Leonardo met her eyes. "The question is what he does." "The reporter," Sofia said. "If Victor tells the reporter to publish before we can respond, I can get an injunction." "It takes time." "Yes." "Can you delay it another way?" Leonardo was quiet for a moment. "There's a way," he said. "But it requires me to do something I have not done publicly in 20 years." "What?" "Ask for help," he said, like the words cost him something. Sofia looked at him. "Who?" she said. "There are people in this city who owe me," he said carefully. "People in positions that could slow a publication's timeline if the right conversation happened. Not permanently, not through anything illegal, just people who could make a call that delays things by 48 hours. "Old network," she said. "Yes." She thought about what that meant, what world that reached into. "And you haven't used it because I've been trying to step away from that world for 5 years, he said. "Using it now means making a withdrawal from an account I was trying to close." "But you'd do it." "To protect you." "Yes." He said it without hesitation, without drama. Just fact. Sofia sat with that. "Don't," she said. He looked at her. "We don't need 48 hours borrowed from people you're trying to leave behind," she said. "If we do this right, we don't need delay. We need to move faster than Victor expects. He's counting on us being reactive. He's built everything around us responding to him." She leaned forward. "What if we don't respond? What if we call the Times editorial desk today, not Wednesday today, and we give them a better story than the one Victor handed them? Today. This afternoon. Before Victor's reporter files. We walk in with the full record of the Foundation 12 years of documented impact, every financial statement, the governance structure, the donor history. We give them the story of how Victor has been systematically working to position himself to take over a charitable institution." She paused. "And we give them something Victor can't give them." "What?" "A human story," she said. "Yours, Isabella. What the Foundation actually came from. Why you built it." Leonardo looked at her across the small cafe table. She watched him process it, not the strategy he had already processed, the strategy she could see that in his face. He was processing the other part. The part where he talked about Isabella to a reporter. The part where he became visible in a way he had spent 2 decades avoiding. "That's," he started. "I know what it is," she said. "It means every part of it becomes public. Her illness, my absence at the end, all of it." "Yes. It means—" "Leonardo." She held his gaze. "You told me 3 weeks ago that you made a decision after Isabella died, that you were done saying things too late." She paused. "This is the same decision, just louder." The cafe made its ordinary sounds around them. Coffee machine, conversation, the door opening and closing. Leonardo Moretti sat in a corner chair in a neighborhood cafe and looked at the woman across from him and made a decision that she could see moving through his face like weather. "Call your media attorney," he said. "Tell her to move the meeting to today." Today. The attorney's name was Claire Whitmore, and she had the particular energy of someone who ran on competence and strong coffee and did not have patience for people who wasted her time. She met them at her office at 1 in the afternoon and spent the first 10 minutes reviewing the materials Sophia had spent the morning compiling: the Foundation records, the documentation of Victor's board maneuver, the timeline Sophia had built on the legal pad, and a printed record of the reporter's call, which Sophia had noted in writing within minutes of hanging up. Claire read everything without speaking. At the end, she set the papers down and looked at Leonardo. "You want to do a proactive interview," she said. "Yes. Today. If possible." "I can get you in front of the right editor by 4 o'clock, Claire said. "The question is whether you understand what you're agreeing to. Once you sit down, the record is the record. I can shape the framing, and I can be in the room, but I can't unring the bell." "I understand." Claire looked at Sophia. "And you?" "I'm going on record," Sophia said. "Your history will be part of the story. The debt. Your parents. I know. Victor has framed you as—" "I know what he's framed me as," Sophia said. "I want to tell a different story, my story, and I want it told accurately." Claire studied her for a moment. "All right," she said. "Let me make some calls." She stood and walked to the window and made 3 phone calls in 12 minutes, and when she came back, she sat down and looked at both of them. 4:15, she said. "Editorial conference room. You have 45 minutes with the editor and a senior reporter who is not the one Victor contacted." She paused. "There's one condition they've asked for." "What?" Leonardo said. "The Foundation financials, full disclosure. They want to run an independent review before publication." Leonardo didn't hesitate. "Done," he said. Claire nodded. She started gathering materials. Sophia sat in the attorney's office with her hands folded in her lap and thought about what was coming. The questions, the record, the version of her life that would exist in print after today. And she noticed that she was not afraid. She was something else. Something that was the opposite of invisible. Neg. The editorial meeting lasted 70 minutes. The editor was a woman in her 50s named Barbara Holloway, who had been at the paper for 23 years and who listened the way experienced journalists listened, with complete stillness, total attention, and an expression that gave away nothing at all. Leonardo spoke for 40 minutes. Sophia had never heard him speak publicly before. She had heard him in conversation, precise, controlled, real. This was different. This was a man who had decided to tell the truth in front of a witness and had stripped everything back to the essentials. He talked about his family, the 3 generations of decisions that had built an empire on the wrong foundations, and the moment his father's death, and then 8 months later, his fight with Isabella, and then her death, when he understood that empires built the wrong way did not outlast the people who built them. He talked about Isabella, plainly, without performance. He talked about Sophia in a way that made her hands tighten in her lap, not because he said anything that wasn't true, but because the way he said it, the simplicity of it, made the truth sound like something she had not quite understood until she heard it described from outside. He said, "She helped my sister because my sister needed help. There was no other reason. When I found her and discovered she was struggling, I helped her because there was no other reason." That is the complete account. Barbara Holloway wrote something on her notepad. Then she looked at Sophia. "Miss Bennet," she said, "in your own words." And Sophia, who had spent years being invisible, being unmemorable, being the shadow that moved between the powerful people and cleared away what they left behind. Sophia told her story. She told it plainly. Her parents, the debt, the event work and the cafe, and the years of carrying Ethan forward on nothing but the refusal to let him fall. Isabella, the Waldorf, the balcony, the note that said, "I won't come back if you'd rather I didn't." She told it as a sequence of real things that had happened to a real person. When she finished, the room was quiet. Then Barbara Holloway said, "Victor Romano gave us a story about a woman in financial distress being recruited as leverage. What you've just described is something completely different." "Yes," Sophia said. "Why should I believe your version over his?" "Because mine has documentation," Sophia said. "And because his required a specific interpretation of events that served his specific purpose. Mine is just what happened." Barbara looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at Leonardo. "I'm going to need 48 hours, she said. "We'll review the financial records. We'll follow up with the board members who voted. We'll speak to the foundation staff." "Fine," Leonardo said. "And Mr. Romano will likely become aware that this meeting happened." "I know. He'll move quickly." "Let him," Leonardo said. Barbara nodded slowly. "I'll be in touch," she said. They walked out of the building at 5:30 into the cooling evening air and stood on the sidewalk, and neither of them spoke for a moment. "You did something today," Sophia said. "We did something today," he said. "You talked about Isabella to a reporter." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "It was..." He stopped. "It was not as hard as I expected, and harder than I expected, at the same time. That's what the truth usually is." He looked at her. "You were..." He stopped again. "Don't tell me I was brave," she said. "I don't feel brave. I feel like someone who made the only logical move available." "That's not what I was going to say." "What were you going to say?" He looked at her steadily. "I was going to say you were exactly yourself," he said. "The entire time in there under pressure with someone watching and writing it down, you were exactly yourself. No performance, no management, just you." She looked at the street. "I've spent a long time not being exactly myself," she said. "I know." It felt strange. Did it feel wrong? She thought about it honestly. "No," she said. He nodded. They stood there a moment longer. "I should get home to Ethan," she said. "I'll have someone watching the building tonight," he said. "Victor will hear about this meeting within the hour. He'll want to..." Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. She felt Leonardo watching her as she answered. "Miss Bennet?" A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Young, she thought, maybe 30. Speaking quickly like someone who had decided to say a thing and needed to say it before they changed their mind. My name isn't important. What's important is that I work for Victor Romano, and I've been asked to do something tonight that I'm not willing to do. Sophia turned slightly away from the street noise. What were you asked to do? She said. There's a story about your brother, the voice said. It's not true. I know it's not true because Victor had me write it. It's designed to look like your brother was involved in something at the engineering workshop, a theft, a vandalism incident, something that would create a situation. Victor has a contact at the school district. The plan was to have the story filed tonight and have someone at the district react to it tomorrow morning before anyone could... Stop, Sophia said. Her voice came out completely level. Every part of her had gone to that quiet place. Where is Victor right now? She said. His office. He's been there since 4. He knows about your meeting at the Times he found out an hour ago. And the story about Ethan, has it been filed? Not yet. It was supposed to go out at 7. She looked at her watch. 5:47. Who else knows about this? She said. Just me and Victor, and the contact at the district. What's your name? She said. A pause. Marcus? He said. Marcus. She kept her voice even. I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not file that story. Do not let it go out. Can you stop it? I'm the one who was going to send it. Then don't send it. She paused. And I need you to document everything, every instruction Victor gave you. Written or recorded, I don't care which. Can you do that? A longer pause. He'll know it was me. Not if you're careful, not if you move fast. She made a decision. I'm going to give you a phone number. It's the number of an attorney. You call her tonight and you tell her everything you just told me, and she will tell you exactly what your options are. She turned to Leonardo, who was watching her with the focused stillness of someone who understood the shape of what was happening, even without hearing the other side of the call. She held out her hand. He gave her his phone without a word. She found Claire Whitmore's number. She read it to Marcus. Call her before 7, Sophia said. Don't wait. And Victor? Let us handle Victor, she said. Your job right now is to call that attorney and to not send that story. Can you do those 2 things? A breath. Yes, Marcus said. Good. She paused. Thank you, Marcus. This took something. She hung up. She turned to Leonardo. She told him in 60 seconds. She watched his face during those 60 seconds, watched the controlled stillness shift into something colder, watched the decision forming, watched him reach the edge of something, and stop. Because of what she had said 3 days ago. Don't become someone she would have been ashamed of. He stopped. Victor, he said, and his voice was completely level, is in his office. Yes. And he's about to destroy a 16-year-old's reputation to slow down a newspaper story. Yes. He was quiet. I need to go there, he said. I know. I need you to understand that I am not going to do anything that... I'm coming with you, she said. He looked at her. Sophia, I'm coming with you, she said again. Because if I'm not there and something happens, the story becomes what Victor wants it to be. And because... She stopped. Because you promised to call me before you decided. I'm not letting you call me after. He looked at her for a long moment. Get in the car, he said. Victor's office was on the 34th floor of a building in Midtown, the kind of floor that looked out over the city like a command post, which was exactly how Victor had always treated it. Leonardo had been to this office 100 times. He had stood at that window and made decisions about things that mattered, and Victor had stood beside him and offered counsel that Leonardo had trusted completely. He stood in the elevator now and thought about 15 years. Sophia stood beside him. She did not say anything. She did not try to manage what he was feeling. She just stood there, present and real, and that was enough. The elevator opened. The assistant at the outer desk started to stand, then stopped when she saw Leonardo's face. and sat back down. Leonardo walked through the outer office and opened Victor's door without knocking. Victor was at his desk. He looked up. He did not look surprised, which meant he had known this moment was coming and had decided to meet it sitting down, which was a choice signal about how he planned to play this. "Leonardo," he said, pleasantly, like a man greeting a colleague. "Victor." Victor's eyes moved to Sophia. "Miss Bennett," he said. "I wasn't expecting—" "I know you weren't," she said. Victor looked back at Leonardo. "You went to the Times," Victor said. "Yes, I heard. Barbara Holloway is thorough. She'll do her job well." He leaned back slightly. "It won't be enough. The story I gave them has documentation. Your version has a sympathetic narrative. Sympathetic narratives lose to documentation in my experience. Your documentation includes records that were obtained through someone inside my legal team," Leonardo said. "Records that were privileged, which means your story has a sourcing problem that your reporter doesn't know about yet." Victor was quiet. "And the story about Ethan Bennett," Leonardo continued. "The one that was supposed to go out at 7 tonight, that's not going out." Something moved through Victor's face. Fast, controlled, but Sophia saw it. "You have someone in my operation now," Victor said. "Someone in your operation has a conscience," Leonardo said. "That's different." Victor looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at Sophia, and she understood something in that moment, standing in Victor Romano's office at 6 in the evening. With the city spread out the window behind him, she understood that Victor had not factored her in correctly. Not because he had underestimated her intelligence or her capability, but because he had looked at her and seen leverage. A pressure point, a soft place in Leonardo's armor. He had never once considered that she might be the reason the armor held. "This is over, Victor," Leonardo said, quietly, completely. "Is it?" Not a question, a delay. Victor buying himself time to recalculate. "The foundation is safe. The Time story will run on our terms. Marcus has already contacted our attorney. And you have in the past 72 hours attempted to plant a false story about a 16-year-old boy in order to create leverage over his sister, in order to create pressure on me." Leonardo paused. "That is not a position from which you recover. Not with me. Not with the board. Not with the partners." Victor looked at him. "You can't prove—" "Marcus recorded his instructions," Sophia said. Victor went still. The silence in the room was absolute. Then Victor Romano, 15 years of loyalty and 20 years of planning and the careful, patient architecture of a man who had decided that what he deserved was the thing someone else had built. Victor sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment and said nothing. "Why?" Leonardo said. "After everything, why?" Victor looked at him, and for the first time since Sophia had heard his name, she saw something real in his face. Not warmth, not regret. Something more complicated, the expression of a man who had made a decision so long ago that it had become who he was, and who was now standing at the end of it. "Because I built half of what you have," Victor said. "Every strategy, every structure, every alliance that kept you in a position to be the man everyone looked to." His voice was even. "You got to be the face. I got to be the mechanism. For 15 years. You were paid." "I wasn't paid enough to be invisible," Victor said. "You of all people should understand that." The room went quiet. Sophia looked at Leonardo. She watched him absorb the specific resonance of that word from someone who had spent 15 years inside his world. She watched him decide how to answer it. "You should have told me," Leonardo said. And she heard in his voice something she had not expected, not anger, not contempt, something closer to grief. "If that's what you needed, recognition, acknowledgement, something different, you should have said." "Men like you don't hear that kind of conversation," Victor said. "Maybe not then," Leonardo said. "But I've been changing." "I know," Victor said. "I know." He looked at Sophia. "She changed you." "She reminded me of things I already knew," Leonardo said. "There's a difference." Victor looked between them. Then he looked at his desk, his hands on the surface, the city and the window behind him. "What happens now?" he said. "You resign from the Foundation," Leonardo said. "Tonight. I want your letter before midnight." He paused. "And you step away from the other operations, all of them. I'll make arrangements that don't leave you without resources, but you're done." "And if I don't?" "Marcus's recording goes to 3 different people simultaneously," Sophia said. "All of them are waiting for a call that either comes from me or doesn't." Victor looked at her, long and straight. "You planned this," he said. "The attorney, Marcus, all of it." "I planned the part I could plan," she said. "Marcus made his own choice. You prepared for tonight." "I've been preparing my whole life for people who use other people as instruments," she said quietly. "It wasn't hard to recognize." Victor was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You should keep her, Leonardo, whatever else happens." He said it without warmth, without generosity, just flatly like a man stating a fact at the end of his ledger. "She's the only person I've met in 15 years who is actually ahead of me." He reached into his desk drawer. He pulled out a sheet of letterhead. He picked up a pen. Leonardo looked at Sophia. She looked back. And in the 34th floor office, with the city going dark outside and Victor Romano writing his resignation in his careful, precise hand, Sophia felt something she could only describe later quietly to herself as the specific relief of something ending cleanly. Not victory, not triumph. Just the ending of something that had needed to end. Victor finished writing. He slid the letter across the desk. Leonardo picked it up and read it and folded it and put it inside his jacket. He looked at Victor one last time. "The 15 years were real," he said. "Whatever else was true, that part was real." Victor said nothing. Leonardo turned toward the door. Sophia followed him. In the elevator going down, they stood side by side and did not speak for 12 floors. Then Sophia said quietly, "Are you all right?" "No," Leonardo said. She nodded. "That's honest," she said. "I know." He looked at the elevator doors. He wasn't wrong, you know, about being invisible, about building something and not being seen for it. He paused. "I understand that better than he knows." She looked at him. "Then you understand why it matters," she said. "Being seen." He was quiet. "Yes," he said. "I do." The elevator doors opened. They walked out into the lobby, and through the revolving doors, and into the evening, which had gone full dark while they were upstairs. The city lit and moving around them like it always was, indifferent and enormous and ongoing. Sophia's phone buzzed. Claire Whitmore Marcus came through. "Recording is solid. We're good." She showed Leonardo the screen. He read it. He exhaled once, slow, like something he had been holding for days. "Go home," he said. "Be with Ethan." "What about you?" "I have calls to make, things to close." He paused. "But He stopped. "I'm not going to do anything that requires you to say what you said on the balcony." "Good," she said. She started to turn. "Sophia." She turned back. He was looking at her with the expression she had learned in pieces over weeks, the one that broke through everything else, the one that wasn't controlled or managed or performed, the one that was just him plainly. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm saying it anyway." She stood on the sidewalk in the evening air and looked at this man, the walls still visible, still standing, but with cracks in them, now real cracks, the kind that let light through in both directions. "Good night, Leonardo," she said. "Good night," he said. She walked to the subway. She did not look back. But she knew without looking that he stood there until she turned the corner. And she let him, because some things deserved to be witnessed, and she was done disappearing before the moment was finished. The Times story ran on a Thursday. Sophia found out at 6:47 in the morning when her phone buzzed with a text from Claire Whitmore, that said simply, "It's up. It's good. Call me when you've read it." She was already awake. She had been awake since 5, which had become her pattern over the past week, waking in the dark and lying still and listening to the city begin its slow return to noise, while her mind ran through everything that had happened and everything that was still in motion. Taking inventory, the way she took inventory of everything methodically, without panic, just accounting for what was real. She sat up and opened her phone and read the article. It took her 11 minutes. When she finished, she sat on the edge of her bed and held the phone in both hands and breathed. The headline was, "From Charity to Combat, How One Advisor's Quiet Power Grab Threatened the Future of New York's Most Impactful Foundation." Victor's name was in the second paragraph and did not appear kindly. The story followed the documentation precisely, the board maneuver, the leaked records, the planted reporter contact Marcus's account of the false story intended for Ethan. Claire had negotiated the framing carefully, and it showed. Leonardo's name appeared in the 6th paragraph in the context of the Foundation's 12-year history and the interview he had given Barbara Holloway. The article described him with the kind of careful, evidence-based language that acknowledged complexity without sensationalizing it, a man who had built something real from complicated beginnings, who had chosen transparency when it would have been easier to stay silent. Her own name appeared in the 14th paragraph. 1 paragraph, 6 sentences. It described her accurately. The event work, the debt her father had left, the connection to Isabella, the friendship. The article used the word friendship, which was Barbara Holloway's word, not hers or Leonardo's, but which she read and did not dispute, that had developed over the months since the Waldorf. 6 sentences that were entirely true, and that made her feel reading them like a person with a real story, rather than a liability, or a shadow, or a pressure point in someone else's war. She read those 6 sentences 3 times. Then she got up and made coffee and went to knock on Ethan's door. "You need to see something," she said, when he opened it, still half asleep, hair doing the left side thing. He read the article on her phone while she made his breakfast. She watched his face move through it, the focused concentration, the small frown when he hit the part about Victor, the stillness when he reached the paragraph about Ethan Bennett, 16, whose name had nearly been attached to a fabricated incident at the request of a man who saw him as a tool. Ethan set the phone on the table. He looked at his sister. "The engineering workshop," he said. "Yes, that's why you sent me there." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "You should have told me," he said. "You were safer not knowing." "I'm 16, Sophia, not 6. He looked at her steadily, and she saw in his face the thing that had been growing there for the past year, the specific gravity of a person becoming themselves, leaving the soft edges of childhood behind and arriving at something more definite. "I can handle knowing things." She looked at him. "I know," she said. "You're right, I'm sorry." He picked up his fork. "Is it over?" he said. Victor resigned. "The board is stable. The documentation is with the attorney." She paused. "Yes, that part is over." "And the other part?" She looked at her coffee. "What other part?" Ethan gave her the look that 16-year-olds gave adults who were being deliberately obtuse. "Sophia," he said. "Eat your breakfast," she said. He ate his breakfast, but he was smiling, which was its own answer to a question she hadn't asked. Leonardo called at 9. "You've read it," he said, "an hour ago." And she thought about the 6 sentences. About Barbara Holloway's word friendship sitting on the page in black ink in the New York Times. "It's accurate," she said. "That was all I wanted," he said. "For it to be accurate. Are you all right?" A pause that was different from his usual pauses, softer at the edges. "The foundation board chair called me at 7:30, he said. "She said she was proud of how I handled it. That's the first time anyone on that board has used the word proud in the context of something I did." He stopped. It felt strange. Good strange or bad strange. Just strange, he said. Like wearing something that fits when you're used to things that don't. She understood that exactly. 3 donor partners have called this morning to reaffirm their commitments, he continued. 2 new organizations have reached out about potential partnerships. He paused again. When you do the right thing publicly, apparently people notice. That surprises you? Genuinely, yes. She smiled, and because he couldn't see it, she let herself. There's something else, he said. His voice changed slightly, not more serious, because he was consistently serious, but more deliberate the way he sounded when he was choosing words with specific care. I want to do something with the foundation. Something new. I've been thinking about it for a few months, and this week made me certain. What kind of something? A program specifically for families navigating financial hardship following the death of a parent, he said. Debt relief, legal support, housing stabilization, the kind of practical help that doesn't require people to be in crisis before they can access it, the kind of help that reaches people before they're desperate. He stopped. I want to call it the Bennett Program. Sophia stopped breathing for a moment. No, she said. Sophia. Absolutely not. It's named after Isabella's last name, my family name. Bennett was Isabella's. Your family name is Moretti, she said. He was quiet. Then I'm telling you the wrong story, he said. It's named after you. I know what it's named after. You spent 3 years. Leonardo? She heard her own voice, not sharp, not cutting, just absolutely clear. You are not naming a foundation program after me. I am not a symbol. I am not a lesson. I am not the moral of someone else's story. She paused. Do the program. It's a good idea. It's an important idea. Give it a real name that means something to the community it serves, but not my name. Silence. Then quietly, you're right. I know. Another pause. You are the most consistently correct person I have ever met, he said, and it is genuinely humbling. Good, she said. You were due for some humbling. And this time, she heard it, the laugh real and short, and almost surprised the laugh of a man who had forgotten he could make that sound. It did something to her that she was done pretending it didn't do. The week after the article, things moved fast. Victor's resignation had sent a quiet shock through the network of people who knew what Victor Romano's position had meant, which was a large number of people, because Victor had spent 15 years cultivating exactly the kind of connections that noticed when he moved. Some of those people called Leonardo. Some of them called the foundation. Some of them, the ones who had been working with Victor rather than for Leonardo, simply went quiet and stayed that way. Marcus, who had made his call to Claire Whitmore and recorded his instructions and handed over everything he had, was given 3 things. Legal protection, a letter of reference from Claire describing his cooperation, and the name of a job placement contact at a nonprofit organization in Brooklyn that did not require him to explain the full story of why he had left his last position. He took all 3. Claire Whitmore filed the documentation with the relevant oversight bodies and let the process run its course, which was the cleanest available outcome, not criminal proceedings, not public spectacle, just the systematic dismantling of the structures Victor had built inside Leonardo's organization, one by one, with precision. Leonardo worked through it all with the focused efficiency of a man who had been waiting to do exactly this for years. He brought in an external auditor. He restructured 3 departments. He had 6 conversations that she did not know the details of and did not ask about, because she understood by now that there were parts of his world that were changing and parts that were not finished changing yet, and the work of trusting someone was not demanding they be finished before you started. She called him on a Thursday evening 10 days after the article to ask about the board's response to the audit. He answered and told her and then said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Gloria's Cafe," he said. "Tuesday morning. I want to be there." She held the phone. "You've been coming to Gloria's Cafe every Tuesday for 2 months, she said. "I want to come knowing it's something we've both decided," he said. "Not something I do unilaterally and you accommodate. She thought about what that meant. The specific care of it. The way he was asking not for permission, but for mutual acknowledgement, the difference between a man who moved into spaces and a man who was learning to be invited. Tuesday, she said. 8:45. I'll be there, he said. He was there. And this time, when her break came, she sat across from him and they talked. Not about the foundation, not about Victor, not about anything with strategic weight. He asked about a book she was reading. She told him. He had opinions. She disagreed with one of them and said so, and he argued his case, and she found a flaw in his argument, and he conceded it with the exact expression of a man who was not used to conceding things, and was discovering he did not mind as much as he expected. At 9:30, she stood to go back to work. Same time next week, she said. He looked up at her. Same time next week, he said. It was the most ordinary exchange she could imagine. It was the one she thought about for the rest of the day. No, the twist came 3 weeks later, and it came from a direction she had not seen. She was at the foundation Leonardo had asked her to consult on the rollout of the new family support program, and she had said yes after making him agree to 3 conditions. She would be paid a consulting rate. She would have genuine input rather than decorative approval, and the program name would be determined by community stakeholders, not by either of them. He had agreed to all 3. She was in a meeting with 2 program staff members, working through the intake criteria for the new program, when the Foundation's communications director knocked on the conference room door and said, "Sophia, there's someone here to see you." She looked up. "Who?" "She says her name is Margaret. She says she knew your father." The name meant nothing. She excused herself from the meeting and went to the small reception area and found a woman in her late 60s sitting very straight in the waiting chair, wearing a wool coat, holding a handbag in both hands, the way people held things when they were managing their nerves. The woman looked up. "Sophia Bennett," she said. "Yes. I'm Margaret Calloway. I was your father's attorney, the one who handled his estate." She paused. "I've been trying to reach you for 3 years. Sophia sat down slowly in the chair across from her. "My father didn't have an estate attorney," she said. "When he died, there was a debt," Margaret said. "I know. That's part of what I need to tell you." She set her handbag carefully on the floor beside her chair. "Your father came to me 6 weeks before he died. He was aware that the medical debt was growing beyond what he could manage. He was also aware that he had made an arrangement years earlier, a business arrangement with a man who owed your grandfather a significant favor that had never been formalized." Sophia watched her. "What kind of arrangement?" she said. "A property arrangement," Margaret said. "A building in Brooklyn held in a trust that your father was the named beneficiary of, belonging to an agreement that predated his financial troubles by 15 years. She opened her handbag and took out a folder. "Your father signed the arrangement over to the trust for safekeeping. When he died without a will, or what everyone believed was without a will, the trust remained active. But the paperwork was tied up in a probate complication that I have been attempting to resolve for 3 years. Sophia looked at the folder. "I've been searching for you," Margaret said. "You moved twice. And then I lost the thread entirely until I saw your name in the Times article last week." Sophia said nothing. Margaret opened the folder. "The building is yours," she said. "Has been yours since your father died. Once the probate issue is resolved, which my office is prepared to complete within 90 days, you will be the legal owner of a 6-unit residential building in Park Slope, Brooklyn, which is currently fully tenanted and generating rental income." She looked at Sophia over the edge of the folder. "The income that has accumulated over 3 years, held in escrow pending your identification, amounts to just under $240,000. The room was very quiet. Sophia looked at the folder. She looked at Margaret Calloway. She thought about her father, a man who had been ordinary and imperfect, and who had loved his children with the specific ferocity of someone who understood he was not going to be there long enough. A man who had gone to the wrong people for money because the right people had all said no. A man who had been trying even at the end to build something that would outlast him. She had not known. He had not told her. He had been sick and scared, and he had signed papers with an attorney, And he had not told her because she was 23, and she was already caring too much, and he had thought she understood now, with a clarity that came from standing at a distance from the grief he had thought he was going to be there to tell her later. There was no later, but he had tried. He had tried. "I need a moment," she said. "Of course," Margaret said. Sophia stood and walked to the window, and stood with her back to the room, and did something she had not let herself do in front of anyone since her father's funeral. Not in front of the debt collectors, not in front of the event coordinator at the Waldorf, not in front of Leonardo on the balcony when he told her about Isabella. She cried, quietly, completely. For the specific grief of a daughter who had spent 3 years believing her father had left her nothing but debt, and who had just discovered he had been trying to leave her freedom. She gave herself 90 seconds. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand and turned around. "I'll need my own attorney to review the documents," she said. "Of course," Margaret said. "I would expect nothing less." "Can you leave copies with the front desk?" "Already done." Sophia looked at this woman who had spent 3 years trying to find her. "Thank you," she said, "for not stopping." Margaret picked up her handbag. "Your father was a good man in a bad situation," she said simply. "That's not a complicated thing to honor." She left. Sophia stood in the reception area for a moment. Then she went back to the conference room and sat down and looked at the 2 program staff members who were politely pretending they had not noticed she had been gone for 15 minutes with red eyes. "Sorry," she said. "Where were we?" She told Leonardo that evening. She told him the way she told him things now directly without building up to it, without managing his reaction in advance. She had learned that he preferred honesty, with edges over honesty that had been smoothed down for comfort. He was quiet for a long moment after she finished. "Your father planned ahead," he said. "He tried to. He protected you the best way he knew how." "Yes." "And you spent 3 years not knowing." "Yes." A pause. "Are you all right?" he said. She thought about that. She stopped. "I'm something. I don't have the right word for it yet." "You don't need the word yet," he said. "I cried," she said, "at the foundation, in front of a stranger." "Good." She blinked. "Good," she said. "You've been holding that for 3 years," he said. "Good that it found a way out." He paused. "Grief needs somewhere to go. If you don't let it go forward, it goes sideways, and sideways grief is the most destructive kind." She sat with that. "That sounds like something Isabella told you," she said. "Word for word," he said. "She said it to me at 17 and I didn't understand it for 20 years. She exhaled slowly. "The building is in Park Slope," she said. 6 units. I need to talk to a property attorney. I have no idea what I'm doing." "I know someone who knows property law very well," he said. "And before you say anything, she's a friend of the foundation. She charges standard rates, and I will give you her number and leave the rest entirely to you." "That's very restrained of you." "I'm practicing," he said, and she could hear the smile in it, real and dry and completely his. "How is it going?" "Inconsistently," he said, "but improving." The gala was in December. The Moretti Foundation's annual fundraising dinner, held every year at the Plaza, was the event that had funded 3 new programs over the past decade, and that drew the specific intersection of wealth and genuine civic commitment that Leonardo had spent years cultivating. It was by every measure that Sophia understood from years of working events exactly like it, a well-run operation. This year, it was different. This year, there was a new program to announce the Family Stabilization Initiative, which had been named by the community stakeholders exactly as Sophia had required, and which was called the Harbor Program, because one of the community members on the naming committee had said that what families in crisis needed was not rescue, but harbor a place to stabilize, to breathe, to plan the next thing from solid ground. Sophia had loved that immediately. Leonardo had said, "That's better than anything I would have come up with." She had said, "That's because you didn't come up with it." She was at the gala in a capacity she had never occupied at an event before, not as staff, not as invisible infrastructure, not as the woman carrying the trays. She was there as a consultant and a speaker, and as herself. Leonardo had asked her 3 weeks earlier if she would speak about the harbor program. Not on his behalf, on the program's behalf, on the behalf of the families it was designed to reach. She had said yes after 24 hours of thinking about it, during which she had sat in her apartment and had a long, honest conversation with herself about visibility and worth, and the specific fear of standing in front of a room and saying, "I am someone. What happened to me matters. The people this program serves are real, and their reality deserves to be spoken aloud in rooms where decisions get made." She had said yes. The night of the gala, she stood in the lobby of the plaza and felt for the first time in years that she was somewhere she was supposed to be. Not surviving, not performing invisible, not managing the negative space between herself and the world, just present. Ethan had insisted on seeing her before she left the apartment and had stood in the kitchen and looked at her and said, "You look like someone who knows something the room doesn't know yet." "That's very poetic," she said. "I'm a scientist," he said. "That's as poetic as I get." She had hugged him, which surprised him, and then left before he could see her face. She was standing near the entrance to the main ballroom, reviewing her notes one final time, when she felt the shift in the room. The particular quality of attention changing the way it always did. The way she had always been able to feel it from the margins. She looked up. Leonardo was crossing the room toward her. In formal clothes in this space, surrounded by the kind of people who measured worth in square footage and portfolio value, he looked exactly like what he was. Powerful, composed, capable of making decisions that moved large things. All of that was still true and still visible. But she also saw what she had learned to see in him over months of Tuesday mornings and evening phone calls, and one kitchen table with pasta and a 16-year-old asking practical questions about equipment specifications. The walls were still there, but the windows were open. He stopped in front of her. "You're here," he said. "I told you I'd be here." "I know." He looked at her. "You look—" "Don't say I look different," she said. "I wasn't going to say different," he said. "I was going to say you look exactly like yourself, which is what you've always looked like. But tonight you're letting people see it." She looked at him. "Is that what I'm doing?" she said. "That's what it looks like from here," he said. "And from here the view is very clear." She held his gaze. She did not look away. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Now." He glanced at the room filling around them. "Now," she said. "Before I go stand in front of all these people and say things out loud that I've only said quietly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Always," he said. "What do you want?" she said. "Not for the foundation, not from Victor's departure, not from the restructuring." She kept her eyes on his. "From me. What do you actually want?" He was quiet for a moment. Not the calculated quiet. Not the deliberate pause of a man choosing strategy. The quiet of a man who had an honest answer and was deciding whether he was brave enough to say it plainly. He was. "I want Tuesdays," he said. "I want the arguments about books and the legal pads and the phone calls when something is wrong and the phone calls when nothing is wrong." He paused. "I want to be someone you call first. Not because you need something, because I'm the person you call." She looked at him. "And," she said, "and I want to be in your life," he said, "in whatever way you decide is right. Not the way I decide, not the way that suits what I'm used to. The way you choose." He held her gaze. "I've spent my life making decisions for people because I thought I knew best. I'm done doing that. I want to be chosen, clearly, by you." The room moved and breathed and sparkled around them. Sophia Bennett, who had learned to be invisible, who had carried impossible weight without asking for help, who had sat beside a dying woman because kindness didn't require a reason, who had spent 3 years surviving before she found her way to standing, looked at Leonardo Moretti and made a decision. Not because he had paid a debt. Not because he had been searching for her. Not because of Isabella, or the Foundation, or Victor's defeat, or any of the machinery of the past months, Because of Tuesday mornings and the exact change left on a napkin. Because of the note that said, "I won't come back if you'd rather I didn't." Because of a man who had asked to be chosen and had meant it. "Tuesday," she said. 8:45. "And you're buying the coffee this time." Something happened in his face. The last wall not falling, not demolished, but finally fully opened. Like a door that had been stuck for 20 years and had just swung free. He reached out his hand. She took it. Not as a gesture, not as a performance for the room around them, though the room was there and the room was watching. As the simplest possible confirmation of the simplest possible truth that two people who had been invisible to each other in different ways had finally completely decided to be seen. "The speaking slot is in 40 minutes, she said. "I know. I need 5 more minutes with my notes." "I know that too." He didn't let go of her hand. "I'll be in the front row." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." He said it quietly, clearly, the way he said the things that mattered. "I want to." She looked at him one more time. Then she squeezed his hand and let it go, and walked toward the room where she was about to stand in front of 100 people and speak plainly about things that were real. And she felt him watching her go, and she did not look back. And this time, the reason she did not look back was not because she was disappearing. It was because she was arriving. She spoke for 11 minutes. She did not use notes. She talked about her father and the debt and the years of survival and the specific invisibility of people in financial crisis. The way the world made you feel like your poverty was a character flaw rather than a circumstance. The way the resources that existed for families in need were built for crises that had already happened rather than the quiet emergencies accumulating in real time. She talked about what harbor meant, not rescue, not charity in the diminishing sense of that word. Harbor. A place to stop losing ground so you could figure out how to gain it. The room was completely still. When she finished, the applause started before she had fully stepped back from the podium, which never happened at these things, and she stood for a moment in the specific quality of being heard genuinely fully without performance, and let herself feel it. She looked at the front row. Leonardo was watching her with the expression she knew, now the one that broke through everything else. The one that was just him, plainly without armor. He was not applauding. He was holding absolutely still. And she understood that too, that for a man who had spent decades behind glass watching something real, was sometimes more than he knew what to do with, and the stillness was not absence, but its opposite. She stepped down from the podium. She walked back to her seat. He leaned slightly toward her and said very quietly, "Isabella would have stood up." She looked at him. "For the applause," he said, "she would have been standing." Sophia felt her throat tighten. "She's been standing," she said. "She was standing the whole time." He looked at her. He nodded once, slow, the nod of a man accepting something true. Weird. 3 months later, the Harbor program opened its first intake office in the Bronx. Sophia was on the program committee. She had negotiated 3 partnerships with legal aid organizations, helped draft the intake criteria, and personally interviewed 12 families during the pilot phase. She knew each of their stories with the specificity of someone who understood that stories were not abstractions. They were people living forward through circumstances that required not pity, but practical, sustained, intelligent care. The building in Park Slope was managed now by a property firm with Gloria's recommendation behind it. The accumulated escrow income sitting in an account that Sophia had divided into 3 things: Ethan's education fund, a contribution to the Harbor program's first-year budget, and the first real financial cushion she had ever held in her own name. She did not spend it. She did not need to spend it immediately. The knowing it was there was the thing. The specific safety of knowing that if something happened, there was something between her and the fall. Her father had tried to give her that. It had taken 3 years and a road she could not have predicted to receive it. She accepted it in his name. Ethan received a full scholarship to a STEM program in June. He found out on a Tuesday morning and called Sophia at the cafe, and she stepped outside and stood on the sidewalk and let him talk fast and excited and trying to be contained about it and failing completely. And she stood in the cold with tears running down her face while customers walked past and did not notice, which was fine because some things were private in the best possible way. She called Leonardo after. He answered on the first ring. "Ethan got the scholarship," she said. A beat. "Of course he did," Leonardo said. "You knew." "I didn't know. I hoped." A pause. "There's a difference." "You knew," she said. "I thought it was very likely," he said, and she could hear the smile. She shook her head, still standing on the sidewalk, still smiling. "Tuesday," she said. "Tuesday," he said. On a Tuesday in late spring, Sophia arrived at Gloria's cafe at 8:30, 15 minutes early for the first time, because she had been walking and the morning was clear and her body had simply arrived before her schedule did. Leonardo was already there. He had never been early before. He was at the corner table with his coffee, and he looked up when she came in, and something in his face did what it always did when he saw her settled like a thing finding its level. She hung up her coat. She got her coffee from behind the counter. Gloria had given her a key 6 weeks ago, and the arrangement had simply become what it was. Another ordinary thing in a life that was slowly filling with ordinary things she had once believed were not available to her. She sat down. They looked at each other. "You're early," she said. "So are you," he said. "I was walking." "I couldn't sleep." She looked at him. "Good couldn't sleep, or bad couldn't sleep," she said. "Thinking couldn't sleep," he said. "I was thinking about Isabella, about the letters she left. There was one I hadn't opened." He wrapped both hands around his cup. "I opened it last night." She waited. "She wrote it 6 months before she died," he said. "Before she was very sick, when she still thought she had more time." He paused. "She wrote about the kind of life she wanted for me, not what she thought I would have, what she wanted." He looked at the table and then back up at Sophia. She described a Tuesday morning, a regular one. Coffee somewhere quiet. Someone across the table who wasn't afraid of him. He stopped. She described this, specifically. She didn't know she was describing this. She was describing something she wanted for me. But it's this. The cafe was warm. The morning was ordinary. The city moved outside the window. Sophia looked at the man across from her, still powerful, still complex, still carrying the weight of a life that had not been simple and would not become simple, but sitting in a corner of a neighborhood cafe with his hands around a coffee cup and his face completely unguarded. "She was right," Sophia said. "About this. About you," she said. "She always knew who you were. Underneath everything you built." He looked at her. "Who am I?" he said. And she heard it, not a challenge, not performance. A real question from a man who had spent decades being defined by his power and was still learning what remained when you set the power down. She looked at him steadily. "You're a man who left the exact change on a napkin," she said, "because you wanted me to know you weren't trying to own anything." She paused. "You're a man who showed me the exit before he asked me anything. You're a man who promised to call before he decided and kept the promise when it was hardest to." She held his gaze. "You're a man who learned slowly and imperfectly that the most powerful thing he could do was choose not to." He was very still. "That's who you are," she said. "I've been watching for months. That's what I see." Leonardo Moretti sat in the morning light and received that the way she had once received his help with difficulty, with the particular vulnerability of someone who was not used to being given things without debt attached. But he received it. He didn't deflect it or diminish it or turn it back into something manageable. He received it. And that, she thought, was what becoming looked like. Not an arrival, not a transformation, just a person slowly learning to hold the things offered to them without flinching. "Same time next week," he said. She picked up her coffee. "Same time every week," she said. And that was how it went. Not with drama or declaration or the grand gestures that the world said love was made of. It went with Tuesday mornings and honest conversations, and two people who had learned separately and then together that the bravest thing you could do was stay visible when everything in you had been trained to disappear. A woman who had spent years erasing herself found out that the most radical act available to her was simply to remain. A man who had built walls to protect himself discovered that the only thing those walls had actually kept out was everything worth having. They did not fix each other. They did not save each other. They simply showed up. Tuesday after Tuesday, call after call, honest word after honest word, until showing up became the foundation of something solid enough to stand on. And in a city that never stopped moving, in a cafe on Amsterdam Avenue where the owner was 72 and had seen everything and still believed in the ordinary grace of two people finding each other across a corner table, that was exactly enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.